me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though.
They just go to a sweatshop and just go, hey, make this.
Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my nose, yeah, got rose in my cup though. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though.
George Horgan here and Jack Gannett.
All the lights are currently lit here on track, and it is go, go, go!
Contact between the Mercedes teammates.
Denoso with a crafty manoeuvre up the inside. Masterclass from the Chilean.
Crucial championship points on offer here.
Shootout countdown, Danny Beresne.
Longay has done the job. This is for the win between these two.
Freddie Rasmussen wins the United States Grand Prix.
Alfie Butcher wins for the first time ever. Lucas Blakely takes the championship. It's Barry Bourman.
Jarno Opmeer is your champion.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to PSGL once again for PSGL E-Series Season 4. Josh, we're here for the second round of the Championship. It's great to be back once again, and well, Red Bull have a bit of a lead, and we'll see what they can do tonight, because there's one driver that will definitely catch everyone's eye.
Yes, it's certainly a little bit of an opportunistic move here from a couple of the teams. More specifically, I would have to say Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Red Bull have decided to at least try and use a couple of their, let's say, bigger drivers, shall we say? More developed drivers, less of the sort of progressive young ones to go forward. Because the driver lineups tonight, Nathan, mate, they're looking ridiculous.
They really are. They really are. We've got them on our screens right now, and I've got to say, just look at them. Brilliant. Ferrari.
It's a joke. It's just a joke. This is round 2. We normally wait until like round 5 to see these sort of names pop up, right? So, race clutch. Let's start out there. Lilian Derbical and Lenny Papensa. We saw what Lenny was able to do last week. Phenomenal drive. Coming back round 2. Bit more momentum. Getting the gears rolling. Looking forward to see what race clutch is going to be able to develop. And I'll tell you what, let's jump over to McLaren. Simeon Lekomsky and Philip Prejnader. Again, another strong lineup for McLaren. But they do have a little bit of work to do to try and catch up in the standings, which we'll look at in just a little bit. Of course, Aston Martin, Fabrizio Donoso and Duncan Hoffland. Of course, I do believe Duncan put a post out on Twitter saying he's got a slight issue with his elbow. So he's had to turn force feedback down a little bit. So praying for a speedy recovery for him. Valentino Labella and Angelo Duracentio again. Looking at what they was able to do last week, again, tandem, another good showing, another surprise showing from one of the Kuhn's teams. I very much look forward to seeing how they're going to be able to develop over time. You've got the Veloce Academy, Gregory Principal, who I do believe it will be his birthday, or if it is already in Australia, happy birthday, Gregory. It's a pleasure to have you on the grid, with Riley McKay alongside him. But over at Red Bull, we've got Frederick Ramsden, of course, with Formula One Sim Racing World Champion, alongside Declan Barrett. R8G have got Riccardo Benzoni and Harvey Cohen. TES have Ben Marples, Marcel Biega. Ferrari, the current reigning Constructors F1 Sim Racing World Champions, got Barry Burman and Nicholas Longay filling those seats. What a disgusting lineup that is. Williams have Will Lewis and Ike Boehner. Ike Boehner once again showing that he's got a bit of potential to him, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he's developed. But of course, we do have a standings on, coming up in just a second, Nathan.
Of course, we'll have a look at the standings after round 1. So, of course, Red Bull taking a 1-2 with Declan Barrett and Tom Manley, put them at the top with 64 points. A big points gap back to Veloce Academy in second place, and Tomašeng Sim Racing in third after the first round. They've never finished higher than 8th in the standings over the past 2 seasons. So, Very good performance from them last week out in Jeddah. Then we have Race Clutch and R8G, both on 29 points, with Aston Martin in P6 on 22. Then we have Williams on 14 points in 7th, followed by Tatum Racing Team on 13 points in 8th, and then Ferrari on 11 points in 9th, and McLaren, very poor from them, on only 4 points in P10. And that tells me a bit of a reason why, especially Ferrari, have decided to take Barry and Nico out today.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? It's not exactly the sort of start you would expect from the likes of Williams, Ferrari, or McLaren. You know, they're heavy-hitting names. We know they've got a large amount of depth in their team to somewhat utilise over the course of this season. But it's going to be one of those. We saw teams have a weaker start last season and then kind of gradually grow into it. Ferrari's a prime example. They grew into it at a scary pace, to be quite honest with you. But it's going to be interesting to see how they somewhat develop into this season, because of course a slightly tougher grid than you would necessarily expect. And speaking of a tougher grids, we've got some harder hitting liveries this week, don't we, Nathan? We're back to the traditional cars.
It's great. Finally back with the real cars. And sorry there, guys, if it was a little bit laggy. We're just trying to sort out the audio to make sure it's so you can actually hear the cars on track. But it's brilliant, isn't it, to see the logos on the left and all the sponsors and all the actual liveries of the cars on circuit. And the first one out on track will be Will Lewis, of course, on a set of the intermediate tyres. Most drivers take a set of the inters out first just to make sure everything is working correctly so they don't have to waste a set of the soft tyres. And of course, as well, some drivers only like to go out for one lap instead of 2 or 3 in Q1.
And I feel like we can, already pick a couple of names out the hat for a couple of the drivers who might only want to go out and do one lap. But obviously looking at the likes of Freddie Rasmussen, Nicholas Longe, Barry Burmand. But there's also a couple of the drivers in there that you might be able to expect sneaking through with one lap. You know, the likes of Fabrizio Donoso. There's an ample opportunity that if a mistake does occur on one of those laps for one of those drivers, they could very much find themselves in a spot of bother in Q1, which you wouldn't necessarily anticipate. But considering how strong the grid is, it's absolutely insane.
It is. It is a really good grid yet again. Of course, we had a brilliant grid back out in Saudi Arabia, but tonight we've got an even better grid. And also, Josh, just to remind everyone, we said it last week, but the grids will only get better as the rounds go on. So the grids are going to get better and better and better, which is, of course, the best thing to see because it means the racing will be so much closer. And around the circuits such as Kota, the lap times tend to be quite close either way. So I expect to see some big surprises in Q1 and Q2 tonight. I'm just trying to get the audio to be very loud, but unfortunately it seems that for some reason it keeps cutting out, so I'm not sure if that's an issue on my end or if there's a bug with the game. So hopefully
it's a feature. It's a feature. It's not a bug. It's not a bug.
Feature,
this game is flawless. As I'm sure if anyone was watching the F2 race last night when the safety car came out and went in, it was still technically a safety car. It's a feature. I promise you guys. But no, I mean, you mentioned about how it's going to get stronger and stronger as the rounds go on. We've got the likes of David Tunitza, Lucas Blakely, who, still not made an appearance. Of course, Thomas Ronha as well, another driver yet to make an appearance. I feel like this event could really, really start to snowball. Like, the amount of depth that a lot of these teams have, it's just ridiculous. You got Carrollton as well, who's not shown. Ishmael Fassi as well, another driver at the Williams side who hasn't appeared yet. For me, I'm not sure when to expect them, but I hope it's sometime soon. Because if we're able to get a grid where we're looking at 4 or 5 world champions, that could be insane.
It would certainly be very interesting indeed. But we can see now, Will Lewis, of course, in 4th position at the moment, hasn't got a lap on the board. Did have an invalidation though last time, so he's going to go around again on a set of the inters. Race Clutch go 1-2 at the moment after the first intermediate lap set, of course, there. Lilian Dervical and Lenny Papinta looking yet again to try and fight for some top positions. Lenny Papinta being the champion of F2 on the previous season, so definitely a driver we expect to see fighting for that top 10 and maybe even fighting for the top 5. And of course we've got Philip Presnader as well out on circuit, race for Alpine last season in the F1 Sim Racing Championship, so we expect to see him as well fighting for some decent points. But talking quickly about McLaren, Josh, they had a really poor rating, didn't they, back in Saudi Arabia? I think they finished P18 and P20 with Jack and PR. So really, we expect to see both of these drivers here, Philip and Shimon, up in the top 10. They need to be fighting for pole position, and they need to be fighting for podiums, don't they, to try and get them back in this championship? Because yes, we've got 10 rounds, but they're 60 points back from Red Bull.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, right, you look at the standings, you look at where they finished and go, that was a bit bad from them, but, you know, you add a bit of context in how they were both battling in the top 10, a little bit of contact coming through. If no one's aware of a contact, Jonah Martins had a brilliant description of it in the chat last week. I would highly suggest everyone go back and go and enjoy his commentary of Jack West getting in an incident. But again, it's just one of those things where sometimes it's not necessarily their fault they end up getting in those scenarios, but it's about having the mentality to come back. And McLaren may be already showing perhaps a little bit of weakness by not keeping both their drivers in to come back, rebound, and prove that they're able to justify themselves a result back. To me, that's a little bit concerning. Whether they're going to have to take 1 or 2 weeks out, maybe try and recoup, maybe go through and have a little bit of an open talk with them and be like, right, okay, guys, we just got to keep it clean. Points are on the table every single race. We've just got to make sure we finish in positions which are, you know, in the top 15, in the top 10, just to ensure that we can keep building a gap. Even if we're losing out points to other teams, we're still gaining something a bit more great than, let's say, a P17 and a P20.
Certainly, and that's, you know, talking about Ferrari, very similar situation.
Yeah.
He's probably why they brought out Barry and Nico. Obviously, these two, you know, Ferrari, I think they got the constructors, didn't they, last season in F1 sim racing? You know, collectively as a team, they are probably the best in F1 esports. So these two here should be able to deliver maybe even a double podium, maybe 1-2, maybe try and copy what Red Bull did last week. We'll see. But certainly, they will be a duo to be scared of if you're on track tonight.
Yeah, and it's very much a knock-on effect, isn't it? You know, would you see Ferrari show their hand and put in, you know, the big dogs, you know, the alphas of that team, the ones who are able to go and, you know, win sim racing world championships on, you know, the grandest stage of them all in the Maldives? That adds a little bit more pressure, whether that's to the likes of McLaren, whether that's the likes of Aston Martin, you know, chucking in Donoso, Red Bull chucking in Rasmussen. Perhaps that might be in a direct retaliation to what Ferrari have done, and maybe could have thrown a couple strategies out the window, because it is very much like playing chess a lot of the time with these teams, isn't it? They'll wait and see one team's move, act on that, and then hope no one's really got a rebuttal towards it. As we do see the first of the RHE drivers rolling out on circuit here of Harvey Cohen.
Of course, we'll see what Harvey can do, of course. Been here a long time, hasn't he, Harvey? Has been in many different esports scenes as well as a development driver over the past couple of years. And I think last game he was a little bit scarce. We didn't see too much of him on the track, but it's great to see Harvey back, of course, with a brand new team being R8G. Will be great to see what he can do tonight in the Kick Saber car. And yet again, it's great to see the liveries back. It's nice to see the brilliant Saber livery back again, the green and black livery. Of course, I thought at first it looked quite poor, but I actually think this livery on track looks superb, especially on this game where, compared to real life, the graphics are a little bit more colourful, aren't they, Josh?
Yeah, I'll still be honest. I still need a pair of sunglasses to watch it. Like it's a little bit of a slap in the face if you're not expecting a luminous lime green car to come through. But again, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you wouldn't necessarily anticipate seeing like a super vibrant green car. Of course, we've got the Aston Martins, darker green. Looking further back in the past, we had the Jaguars, who were that, again, British racing dark green. This very much just feels like they said, hey, you know what, we've got a bit of extra weight we can spray. What colours kick? Sure, we'll slab the lime green on. Why not? Just to try and make it stand out a little bit more. I'm not sure the sponsors might have had something to do with that, where they're like, yep, just make it as bright as possible, make it a bit of an eyesore in real life. But of course, gaming community, we do love a bit of LEDs, don't we? We do love a bit of a bright flashing lights. And what better to go with a brand new PC, green flashing lights, than a green Formula 1 car.
Of course, we'll see what Harvey can do on his first lap there. A bit of a slide heading out to the first corner, but rounds through turn 2 and now to this horrible S's section here, obviously going as flat out as you can throughout this first part of the sector. And then, of course, having a shift down before having a heavy lift as you head your way through towards the end of sector number 1. A 24.7 there for Harvey as he heads through turn 9. Bit of a kink to the left at turn 10 before hitting the braking zone at turn number 11. A harsh braking zone here just before the 50-metre board. Bit of a lock-up, cut the curb on the inside, then get back on the power now as you get some DRS, Josh, as you head down towards turn 12. And this second sector now is where you tend to make all of the time in the lap.
Exactly, and the key thing I want to point out, Riccardo Manzoni directly behind him should be able to pick up a lovely little bit of a tow, because we know how powerful in this year's game using the battery, using the slipstream can be. It is ridiculous. And around a track like Kota, you would expect a couple of these teams with maybe more orchestrated run plans where they work together in unison to really be able to try and benefit a little bit off it. And, you know, maybe bend the rules a little bit and maybe be a little bit cheeky, but at the same time, you've got to think about if they're able to get away with it and no one's able to spot it, it's not going to be the end of the world. But again, it is one of those things where we will just keep a little bit of a spare eye out for it. And to mention as well, with the lockups, it's a prominent feature of this year's game, isn't it, Nathan? It can be a bit of a visual eyesore. Sometimes it does look like the front tyres are absolutely just going to implode, but locking up is quite often the best way to rotate the car into a lot of these corners, especially the tighter ones where it can be a little bit awkward trying to get the rear rotated.
Of course, as we have the first lap times coming through, currently Angelo D'Ortenzio takes the top spot in the TRT, and then Lenny Papinta goes to the top, the first driver in the 29s with the 29.9, and Declan Barrett heads up into second in the Red Bull car. Then we'll have a little look. The Ferrari's a little bit further back, and we have, I think, Freddie Rasmussen heading through into the final set at the moment. Just heading through in towards the penultimate corner, as we can see Lilian Derbicourt going to second for the Race Clutch team, and then Frederick Rasmussen there. We'll see what can the Red Bull driver do. Heads up into second place. Can't beat Lenny Papinta with a 29.978. We've got Philip Presneder now heading through the final corner into fifth, along with his teammate Szymon Lekomski. We'll see where he can go in the McLaren car. We'll go up into P11 for himself. Then the two Ferraris, Josh, heading through now, Barry and Nico.
Absolutely. Barry absolutely chucking it through this final sector. He's been so aggressive. I've been having a little bit of look at those onboard backwards and forwards. I've been checking through a couple of the drivers, especially with the Lotte Academy drivers. Very interesting techniques being used. I will pick up on the ERS usage. Of course, we mentioned it last week. The overtake mode, it's a little bit strong to say the least, right? But a clever little tactic I've seen a couple of drivers pick up, and I also picked it up a little bit in Jeddah as well. They turned their battery completely off around a couple of his parts of the track. Don't even drop it down just a hot lap. They turn it completely off to then put it back up into overtake mode, to then go on a charge through the fast pacing, good exit of corners, and really maximize their time there. So perhaps that might be something Race Clutch have done a little bit more practice on, because I mentioned it last week, you know, with a potential 11th team lurking to join F1, they would need an eSport team, realistically. Let's be honest, right? Race Clutch, as far as things go, looking very solid out here. They've been solid in these series. Had a little bit of a hindrance, of course, in the F1 sim racing of Alpine. But ever since then, they seem to have turned a new leaf, a new logo, new year, new Race Clutch. That's what I'm saying.
Definitely. They've definitely got to keep all their options open. They don't know what the future lies ahead for them. But currently they're standing quite strong in first and third position after the opening runs of Q1. And of course, with Freddie Rasmussen and Declan Barrett being second and fourth for the Red Bull team. A big surprise further down, though, is Donoso and Longai haven't got a lap time on the board. And they did go around for their laps, so they must have got an invalidation somewhere. But along with those in the drop zone, it will be TES's Marcel Biega, Harvey Cohen for R8G, and Gregory Prejibal for the Lotte Academy. Of course, Josh, you got third last week in Saudi Arabia. They certainly don't want to lose another driver again in Q1.
Absolutely. It's one of those things, isn't it, where they would have realised, reflected on it, and learned a little bit about it. But I have just had the realisation that my waffling has took a new extreme to the point where I'm making up slipstream with ghosting turned on. My waffling knows no bounds, honestly. Apologies for that one, guys. So no slipstream is going to be picked up in the qualifying session because everyone's ghosted.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, if slipstream is enabled, you'd be getting it from 2 seconds back. You'd be at turn 1, and the car coming out the final corner will get a bit of slipstream. It's quite extreme on this game, to say the least, isn't it?
Yeah, it very much feels like if you've got a hairdryer. you start. But no, realistically, it'll be exciting to come towards a race. But when it comes to these qualifying sessions, part of me is very glad that it's on ghosting, and you can't necessarily pick up too much of an advantage. As we do see the first retiree of a session, Declan Barrett with 130 flat, thinking he's safe. And as far as things go, would have to probably agree with it, because I can't see the track changing enough to maybe warrant 3 or 4 tenths of a second here.
Of course, as Debacourt and Papinta also retire from qualifying. Of course, a very good start for the Red Bull and the Race Clutch team. They should easily make it through in towards Q2, but all those behind are heading out on track now to try and get themselves a little bit more safer into Q2, or maybe get out of the drop zone from Q1, of course. Nicholas Longate and Fabrizio Donoso being 2 of the big surprises in that drop zone. So I'm sure they will easily find their way out and up in towards the Q2 session. But of course, obviously, only 3 drivers into the 29s, being Lenny, Freddie and Lillian. So we'll see who else can join them into the 129s, because they are very good times to open up the session. And going through and towards Q2 and Q3, with the gaps they're having in Q1, it definitely shows that, especially Lenny and Freddie, could definitely be fighting for that pole position if they can keep that consistency through in towards Q2 and Q3.
Absolutely. It was a 10th.5 which separated the entire top 10 last week in qualifying around Jeddah.
A lot.
To me, ridiculous. Kota, on the other hand, we know again it's one of those circuits where it's the finest margins will get you those extra positions on the grid. And I feel like we could be in for another barnstormer here. I'm going to make a bold prediction and say, whoa, what do we reckon? 2 tenths between the top 10? And
Certainly possible.
That's being generous, I reckon.
Yeah, it'll be very close. I think, especially, as the F1 games are going further and further, the lap times do seem to be a little bit more consistent, and and a lot more people tend to be within a tenth or within a couple of tenths of each other. So that's why we see so many drivers as well having that chance to fight at the top. So I'm sure if you go out to Q1, it certainly won't be by much. But we can see now Josh Angelo D'Ortenzio heading out for TRT, of course, in P8 at the moment. A brilliant outing so far for himself, and unfortunately, Valentino Labella down in P15. Definitely a big surprise for me. I expected to see him a little bit further than being in the danger zone, but I'm sure they can try and get themselves through and towards Q2. I believe Angelo last week got himself up into Q3 for TRT, didn't he? So
yeah, it was
strong.
a ridiculous performance around Jeddah for D'Angelo. So for me, I want to see the same thing. We know these community teams, yeah, they don't have the same resource, they don't have the same budget as the official Formula One teams, but we're still showing they're very competitive. They're very happy to take the battle to them. And I thought last week we might be a little bit timid racing against a couple of the big names, the likes of Tom Manley Racing. It might have been a little bit, wary of it, but no, absolutely not. They were more than happy to get themselves stuck in, and we saw that numerous times with different drivers. But D'Angelo's not the only one who needs a lap time here. Of course, we've already mentioned likes of Longate, Donoso. But for me, I think Simeon Lekomsky needs a slightly better lap time. Currently sitting in P13. If we expect Donoso and Longate to improve, that puts him to P15. And definitely a risk of dropping out here in Q1.
Of course, and Angelo did get an invalidation, so did Will Lewis, so he won't continue in qualifying. Nicholas Longay heading out the final corner, goes up into P4 for the Ferrari team. Just trying to see who's near the end of their lap. We've got the 2 McLarens heading up towards the line as well. Philip goes up into P5 as Lekomsky goes up into P9, and Will Lewis in 14th here. He could be looking to be out, as Valentino Labella also having an invalidation knocks him out of qualifying, as we can see now. Marcel Biega heading through the middle sector for the RB team. What about Fabrizio Donoso here? Looking to get out of Q1. Should be quite easy for the Aston Martin driver, as Harvey Cohen goes up into P15 and Fabrizio Donoso knocks one of the R8Gs out in Q1, and so does Will Lewis. Will Lewis is out of Q1, and Ben Marple's also a big surprise for TES, of course, being in Q3 last week. He's also out in qualifying along with his teammate Marcel Biega. So TES, brilliant in Saudi Arabia, but unfortunately here in Kota, they will be P16 and P20, but also a big surprise, Ikebana P15. So Williams having one of their drivers out, and one of them being very, very close.
Yeah, not exactly the look they were going for after Jeddah, is it? Having 2 runners so far down, especially for a team like Williams, who do have likes of Carrollton to really put forward. But Let's remember, it's only qualifying, it's only Q1. But as things stand, Liam Pinter leading away, followed by Frederick Rasmussen, Lilian Derbacourt, Nicholas Longate, Philip Prochnader, Declan Barrett, Barry Burman, Fabrizio Donoso, Riccardo Benzoni, Duncan Hofflin round out the top 10 with Simeon Lukomsky, Angelo Dorosendo, Gregory, Riley, and Ika all making their way safely through into Q2. But a potential risk here to get eliminated in Q2. We will say goodbye for now to Ben Marples, Will Lewis, Harvey Cohen, Valentino Labella. I can remember the last one. TES. It was TES. I remember that. Marcel Biega. There you go.
Big surprise indeed. Sad to see both of them out after having such a strong performance last week in Saudi. But then again, we'll see what they can do in the race as we can now get ourselves ready for the second qualifying session. Of course, the bottom 5 from this session will drop out. And with some very big names heading through in towards Q2, it could certainly be a big surprise to see a couple of these names go out in qualifying as well. So will be an interesting one, but hopefully won't be long till we see cars on track.
Absolutely, and well, we say, but we've already seen six pit crew members jumping out, ready to send the cars out. We do have Liam Angelo in the YouTube chat saying Marcel's wheel gave up after sector 1.
Oh.
Lol. So it's not a very lol moment there, Liam.
Certainly not. I mean, last week we had Veloce Academy have an issue with Liam had an issue with his internet, and we had Keen Goldendorp have an issue with his ERS. So it seems like the Q1 issue still is happening, and this time it was Marcel Viega's wheel not working after he went through Sector 1. So definitely a big surprise for, a big sadness for the TES team. But we've got a few cars heading out onto circuit, and yet again, one of the race clutches will be out first, being Lilian Derbacourt, and certainly a very good showing in Q1. But of course, Q2's here now. They might be on a set of the used tyres, I'm not sure. But if they are, we'll see what pace they can do on the used tyres, because it's all good being quick on the new tyres, but of course, you've got to be able to utilise your used tyres, as that's what's going to happen when you're in a race. You know, your tyres aren't going to be new, and they aren't going to have ultimate grip for the whole stint, are they?
You never know. You can pray to Satan for limited grip. But no, especially around Kota as well. It doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be a really abrasive surface, but given the loads you're putting the tyres through, not Maggots and Beckett's, and also through a couple of the tight hairpins where you're carrying a lot of speed, and then of course that final sector as well with the... Are we calling it one corner or two for the double right-hander? Because for me it's always been two, but I've seen some people call it one corner because it's just one steering motion.
What, in the final sector?
Yeah.
I'll class it as one quarter, but isn't it 3? It's 16, 17, and 18,
yeah,
isn't it?
it's technically 3, but to me, you hit 2 apexes, it's 2 corners. Don't ask me how many apexes I hit, because I wouldn't be able to give you a straight answer, to be quite honest with you. But we are seeing drivers get ready on their laps. Looking here as well, Barry Burman, another strong performance from Ferrari. We know they're capable of bouncing back. I want to see how much they're going to be able to bounce back up the field. We should also mention as well the solo RHG driver, Riccardo Benzoni. We know what he's capable of. We know he's got a lot of good form to really try and bounce himself back up through the field, get into Q3. That's going to be where RHG's target are. And that's something that I feel like we could potentially expect from them. But I feel like we was having a little talk before the stream, weren't we, Nathan, about the Veloce Academy drivers. Of course, both Aussies, both waking up at stupid hours in the morning. The fact that they even managed to wake up and get out of Q1, miracle to me. I'm not sure how they've done it, but fantastic stuff from both of them.
Of course, I'm sure it's about 3 or 4 a.m. in Australia at the moment. So a big hats off to Riley and Gregory for turning up when they probably would rather be in bed asleep than playing the F1 24 game. So, yes, I mean, playing F1 is bad enough. Playing F1 24 makes it even worse. So,
you're supposed to be asleep. Another level of commitment. Fair play to them.
Definitely. And we'll see if they can get into Q3 and maybe try and fight for a pole position to wake them up a little bit more before we head in towards the race. But just on board now with, I believe, Fabrizio Donoso, who will be one of the first to set a lap. He will have an invalidation, which means it will be Duncan Hoffland, who sets a 1:30.617 for the first of the session. Then we have Barry Burman coming through along with Freddie Rasmussen. Freddie will go up and not set a lap time, so he must have been on an 8 lap, or maybe he also had an invalidation as Barry goes up to the top there with a 1:30.513. Angelo goes up into third there with a 1:30.852. So I think it's clear to say that they are on a used set of the tyres.
Yo, I just just quickly jumped over to Fabrizio Donoso. He took an alternate line through Q1. Through Sector 1 there. Cutting the circuit to try and get back to the pits quicker. A little bit cheeky. A little bit cheeky, but end of the day, it is Donoso. We expect it from him, don't we? He is a little bit of a character in the F1 community. And he's not alone as well. There are many drivers out here who fantastic personalities all up and down the grid. If any of you have any spare time and you feel a little bit interested, I would highly encourage a lot of you to go check out a couple of their social medias, check out previous races they've done here at PSGL, because there are some absolute cracking ones over the years.
Of course, and Josh, remember, a couple of these will be here, I presume here, for PCF1 next week. I believe that's when it starts, isn't it? I remember kind of put a message in the chat earlier on, so we'll see.
Yeah,
I hope we'll see
shamelessly plug-in George and Jack on our broadcast. Come on, they don't need plug-in. George and Jack are already established. But no, realistically, that grid, I mean...
Brilliant.
If it's going to be anything like it has been in previous seasons, it's going to be insane. And then we sit there as well. We take a little bit of time and consider, right, okay, a couple things are changing between the teams, of course. A lot of drivers hopping around, of course.
Yeah.
The Yano announcement leaving Mercedes, ridiculous. A lot of people saying, potential to Red Bull. And then, of course, WOR. They've shoved him in an Alpine, potential to Alpine. Potentially. They've already got Josh.
Yeah.
And then on top of that as well, I've heard murmurs about him doing real-life racing, going back to karting.
Oh.
Again, ridiculous stuff. No idea where that's going to happen. Hopefully, he'll be full-time on the PCF1 grid, because end of the day, as much as I don't necessarily enjoy watching him race too much, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan, but he brings something special to sim racing as a whole.
He does indeed. I think, he's been here for a very long time in sim racing, hasn't he? And he's been with a couple of teams, of course, winning 2 championships. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what will happen and where he will go. I'm sure he'll be staying in the F1 sim racing world, but where he will go, I don't have a clue. And I'm sure it will be rather interesting to see where he will end up. But also, it's F1 silly season in esports. You never know you never know where anyone's going to end up. Of course, every season it changes, and you have some big surprises. So,
can we just have it like the last F1 season? Everyone just stays put at one place, just so we can get a bit of a sense of familiarity, give everyone a chance to settle in, and then see how everyone does. Because we've got so many drivers, hopping about the place, left, right. It's a bit ridiculous to try and keep track of, to be honest with you.
It is, but we do have our first laps, about to get underway for the start of the Q2 session. Riccardo Benzoni now heading up towards turn number 1 to begin his first lap for the R8G team. Of course, Harvey Cohen going out in Q1, unfortunately, so we'll see what Riccardo can do. The lone R8G kick saber in the second session. Hopefully he can get his way through towards Q3, and I definitely expect that will be something we can see from Riccardo, of course. I believe coming over from PS Benza was his PS gamer tag on the last game, and honestly he came to PC and he's got quicker since he came to PC. Most drivers have to get a bit of settling in and then eventually they find pace, but he came to PC and immediately got quicker and was at the top of F2 and F3. So definitely a big talent in the world, and RHG very happy to have signed him.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. I remember when he first came over, I was commentating back on F3. He rocks up, very quiet, doesn't necessarily say too much in the chat. First race, smashes Q3, ends up pole by, I think it was just over a tenth. And then everyone was like, right, okay, this dude's one trick pony. He's done it around Australia. He won't do it anywhere else. And then he does it again. And people started going, right, okay, never mind. Maybe this dude's something. Of course, had a little stint at SRC, didn't he? One of our lovely sponsors here at PSGL. I can definitely recommend going and checking out their setups. They're pretty good. They make me at least decent at the game, so definitely worth a shot. But Riccardo Benzoni coming across the line, new fastest lap, 1:30 flat. Assumed that's to be on a brand new set of tyres.
Yeah, I presume it would be, because we had some 0.8s in the 0.9, in the last session. But Nicholas Longate goes to the top there with a 29.765, and Lilian Davico up into second for the Race Clutch team with a 129.811 as Cabana doesn't settle up on that time round. Philip Presneder goes up into third place. Gregory Prejibble goes up into P5 in the Veloce Academy car. What about Roland McKay, of course, there? Looking very strong so far, but has an invalidation. As we can see, it's Shimon Lekomsky go up into fourth. Declan Barrett up into third. What about Freddie Rasmussen as he heads through the final corner up towards the line? Goes up into P4 for Freddie, about just under a tenth off the time of Nicholas Longate. And I think we've still got a few cars to come through. We've got Fabrizio Donoso heading through into the final sector now. And we'll see what he can do, Josh, on this next run.
Yeah, absolutely. We know how good Donoso can be. We saw it back in the day of when it used to be Renault around the Hanoi circuit. One of my favourite F1 esports at the times races to go back and look at. Nicholas Longuet as well, being his teammate back then. Personally, a fantastic pairing. I used to love watching, but times changed. Donoso has moved on from the Renault, the banana car, into a more stylish racing British green, as Donoso once again taking the alternative line through Sector 1.
Of course, and I've got to say there, definitely a bit of a surprise to see Fabrizio down in P8 with a 29.939. So just shy of 3/10 off at the time of Barry Burman. We'll definitely be looking to find an improvement on that one, as we can see further down. Riley McKay in 13th, of course, having that invalidation, along with Ikabayana as well. So those two definitely will be looking to go again and, looking to just get their first lap times on the board, along with Lenny Papinta, who's in P15.
Funny, they can't afford invalidations at this point.
Definitely
especially for Ika. Williams already get one driver down. They need something here. They need to get through into Q3 at least. Put the foot down a little bit. Show they're not just here to fill the numbers. They want to still try and compete. Because very quickly, if Red Bull have a strong showing, if Ferrari have a strong showing, even McLaren having a strong showing, again, it just adds another separation, 20% of the way through the season, and you've already got a driver out in Q1 once again. Pressure starts to build.
Of course, it certainly will, and Nicholas Longate thinks he's safe with a 129.765, so he retires from the session. We can see Fabrizio Donoso now just heading back into the pits to obviously get onto a brand new set of softs and goers again very shortly. But so far, the drop zone for the Q2 session is Veloce Academy's Gregory Prejibble, TRT's Angelo D'Ortenzio, Veloce Academy's Riley McKay, Williams' Ike Cabana, and Lenny Papinta for the race clutch team. So Lenny, probably from what we saw in Q1, the biggest surprise going out possibly in the Q2 session, of course, with his teammates. Lilian Debacle up in third place with a 29.8. Lenny should definitely be a little bit higher than he is at the moment. But certainly, Josh, I think with the gaps so far, especially from P3 down to P7 being just over a tenth, we could certainly get some big surprises going out of Q2, I think.
I don't want to say anything. Last time I was speaking positive about any driver in the qualifying, they ended up invalidating the lap time. So it's best if I just don't say anything at this point, I think. But Nicholas Longay retiring from the session, I feel comfortable talking about that. 129.7 should be safe, unless some absolute miracle happens so everyone finds a couple extra miles now, because that is a ridiculous lap time to set in Q2, let alone Barry Burman putting in a 0.6.
Of course, a brilliant lap from the two Ferraris, always at the top of the field, if not the rock bottom. It's one of the two. They're at the top or they're at the bottom. And of course, last week out in Jeddah, they finished P9 in the standings overall. Only 11 points were scored. So definitely much needed for Ferrari to get both drivers on the podium here to get back into that title contention. Of course, Red Bull, yet again, looking quite strong. There was P2 and P4, I think, in Q1. At the moment, they're P4 and P5 in Q2. So they're definitely going to be hunting for that top 5 and the top 3 once again. As we can see, Angelo D'Ortenzio currently out on the circuit. The lone TRT, and of course, got up into Q3 in Jeddah. So definitely we'll be looking to do that again here in Kota. As behind him, we've got the two Ferraris, the two McLarens, Shimon Lekomsky and Philip Presneder, yet again very new to the McLaren team, so they will also be looking to try and get through to Q3 after yet again a poor performance from them back in Jeddah. Only 4 points scored, Josh, so they definitely need to get into Q3 here.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Sometimes it doesn't always go your way, but at the same time, when you've got the likes of Simeon and Philippus Presneder, there's a bit of expectation. They're not nobodies. They are not development drivers. They're not even, mildly good in the community. They are top of the line drivers.
Yeah.
And you could say that about a lot of the drivers on the grid. But as soon as you put pen to paper with a team like a McLaren, like a Ferrari, like a Williams, like a Aston Martin, an R8G, even a Red Bull, you could even argue a Veloce, a certain new level of expectation is put on you by being associated with that team and the success they've had over recent years, over past years, maybe even further than past years if you're looking at Williams. But it's one of those things where it does slowly start to build up. You do realise that you're not just representing yourself, you're not going out there, let's say, like a TRT, like Angelo is right now, racing for themselves, racing for a community team, understanding that, there might be some repercussions to a bad performance, but it's not going to be the end of the world, in comparison to a lot of these drivers who are representing the bigger teams, knowing that there could potentially be repercussions, whether that would be losing a seat on, the team, whether that would be, having to go do more development testing hours rather than racing hours.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things which can weigh subconsciously on their mind.
There certainly is. But we got Angelo now heading through towards the final section, having an invalidation. He will be out of Q2, unfortunately. Will not be able to set another lap time in the session, as we can see. Szymon Lekomski coming through with Philip Presnod. Philip goes up into P6 there. What can his teammate do? Heads up to the line and goes up into P4. Then we've got the two Red Bulls coming through along with Lenny Pepinta, who goes up into P6. Very good from the race clutch cars. What can Freddie Rasmussen do? Declan Barrett goes up into third place. As we can see, Ikebana go up into P6. Riccardo Benzoni go up into P9. And Freddie goes up into P2. And I think here we might see Fabrizio Donoso out of qualifying. Fabi is out of Q2. A big shame for the Aston Martin team. And Philip Presnod are also at risk, as Gregory's also out of Q2. Duncan Hoffland also out of Q2. And Riley McKay will also be out of the second qualifying session. So a big surprise there. Both of the Veloce Academies and also both of the Aston Martins here, Josh, out of the second qualifying, not going to be in that top 10.
Rough pill to swallow there for Aston Martin. Not exactly the qualifying session they were looking for here. But special mention does need to be made to the people who have made it through. So we've got both the Ferraris, both the Red Bulls, both the McLarens, both of the Hasses. Race Clutch again, doing very, very well in qualifying. Looking forward to see what they're going to bring to the race. And of course, Ikebana for Williams and Riccardo Benzoni for that Kicksabber RHG outfit. But Duncan Hoffland, Fabrizio Donoso, Gregory Paulseville, Angelo Docento, and Riley McKay, unfortunately, leaving us here in Q2. So maybe the Aussies can maybe go downstairs, have a can of Luke. Do they have Lucasade in Australia?
Surely. Or Powerade.
Powerade's a shout. I would say maybe a can of Red Bull or a can of Monster, but, they sponsored Red Bull and McLaren, so maybe not them. If you're driving Mercedes. Wait, no. Yeah, no, Mercedes. Okay, that's not Monster anymore, is it?
No.
Do Mercedes have a drink sponsor?
I don't think they do now. They had Monster, didn't they? Until McLaren thought we'll have Monster.
Don't drink Patronus oil. That's a bad idea.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea at all.
But actually, that's a really, really, really horrible idea. Don't. But no, it's one of those things where maybe you can have a little bit of time to reset now. Go have a drink of water, sit there, think a little bit, get their heads back in the game to make advancements in the race. For me personally, wasn't always a fan of getting through into Q3, especially when the old rule was a thing where you had to start with a tyre used in Q2. Again, I preferred to go out in Q2 purely because it gave me a bit of a break to sit and mentally reset. But we know these drivers, they're a lot better than me. They're a lot better than I ever was, believe it or not. Hard to believe, I know, guys. These drivers, they won't need a mental break. They're locked in. They're ready to go. They're waiting now just for that time to tick down to make sure they can get the two perfect runs. Clear bit of track. No ghosting cars in front of them. None behind them to put them off. Locked in. Ready to go.
Of course, and they will all go for 2 runs, I presume, in this third qualifying session. They'll all go out around that 10, 9, 8 minute mark. Of course, sit there, come back in and then go out once more for their final run in Q3. So we expect these other cars heading out very, very shortly. Of course, 4 teams getting both of their drivers through into the Q3 session, being McLaren, Race Clutch, Red Bull and Ferrari. So those four getting all their teams through, both their drivers through for their teams. So definitely going to be in a strong point when we go through in towards the Grand Prix in around 15 to 20 minutes time. Of course, we've got Williams with Icabena through and RHG with Riccardo Benzoni through as well. So we'll see what they can do for their teams in Q3. But around now, we should see a car head out in towards the first corner. But so far, no one's moving at all, Josh.
No, they're staying patient, aren't they? They're not willing to be the first car out there to show their hand to go for 2 runs. Normally, we could potentially see a couple of cars maybe going out on a used set of soft tyres to dive it back into the pits, maybe doing some dummy runs. But none of that happening right now. Everyone's more than happy to stay put. As soon as it hit 9 minutes 30, everyone's decided to chip the cars out. So we will have Riccardo Benzoni leading the way here, hotly followed by, I believe that's Icabena directly behind him, and then one of the Ferraris. And that'll be Nicholas Longuez. Barry Burman just pulls out the pits here as well. Currently, City Global cars flowing out on the circuit. Who would have thought?
They're all together, apart from one of the Red Bulls who's coming out a little bit later, and that will be Freddie Rasmussen. The Iceman himself, leaving it very, very late before he heads out onto circuit. So he will be quite far out of sync of a couple of the others. But of course, it means he has all the track in front of him to himself, and he doesn't have to worry about cars being in front of him. As we can see, Riccardo Benzoni now heading down towards turn 11 on his outlap with the Soul Williams behind of Icabena in P8. Currently, of course, without a lap time set. Then we had the Ferraris, the 2 race clutches, and then the 2 McLarens.
Yep, and then behind that we have Barry Burman and, of course, Declan Barrett, who I believe you had a little bit of a conversation with, and he gave you a little bit of insight of what he thought his strengths and weaknesses around here were.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to get a Q2. At least that's what he said to me yesterday.
Oh.
So, and he's done it now. He's done it now since Q3.
Yeah, he's clearly put the practice in today to make this one happen. But of course, drivers, sometimes confidence fluctuates. We've all been there, whether it's playing a game, a sport. Sometimes we'll just have a bad day. But thankfully, we've seen a lot of these drivers have very good days today. No one having any terrible incidents where, they've locked up, forced themselves to completely miss a run in qualifying. No super silly errors from pushing too hard. Everyone's been able to keep the car pointed in the right direction. At the end of the day, that's all we can really hope for.
Of course, as we see Riccardo Benzoni head up towards turn 1 now to begin his first lap of the Q3 session, of course, heading through the first set, currently through turn 2 and then through in towards the S's section here. Just wanting to take the car very nicely, be smooth on the steering as you head your way around the right-hander. And then a bit of a shift down to 5th gear, and then back on the power through the end of that first set to that. I think it was a 24.6 for Riccardo. Has a bit of a slide though, heading up the hill, and then back on the power now as he heads down towards turn number 11, wanting to brake just before that 50-metre board, hop the curb on the inside, get back on the power nice and early. Brilliant so far from Riccardo Benzoni, heading his way with the DRS down towards turn number 12. Yet again, another very harsh braking zone. Wanted to try and cut the inside if you can without getting a lap time invalidation. Yet again, braking just before the 100-metre. Hop the curb on the inside. Run a little bit wide on the exit as you head your way down towards turn 13 at the right-hander. A 1.0.6 split for Riccardo at the minute, so looking strong so far. Up in towards the left-hander at turn number 15, then back on the power as you head around turn 16, 17 and 18, which in my eyes is just 2 corners.
Thank you.
But F1 makes it 3.
Absolutely brilliant. You see him now flicking it over to the left here just before approaching the final corner on the circuit. It can be very awkward to try and hit the apex there to be able to drive it all the way up towards the line, deploying as much battery as you can. It's a 1:30.3. Now, with the lap times we've already seen start creeping in, he's going to need to do a little bit better than that. Hopefully, his next run's going to be a little bit quicker because we do have many drivers coming up towards the line here. Icabena with a 1:30.7. Then, of course, we've got the race clutch driver, Lenny Papinta, 1:29.7. That's more of a representative lap time that we want to see. Lillian Derbycourt with a 1:29.5. Absolutely ridiculous. What's Barry Burman going to do? A 1:29.3.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant there from Barry Burman as Declan Barrett goes up into 3rd there, just behind the race clutch driver. Now, what can Freddie Rasmussen do? Heading through the end of the lap, just in towards turn number 20 now at the final corner. Can he try and take that provisional pole away? No, he can't because he's got an invalidation. Would have been a 29.599, so would have put him up down into P4 behind his teammate. But it's mad, isn't it, to say, Josh, that P4 is a surprise for a driver.
Yeah, Freddie's one of those drivers. I think George summed it up really well on one of the sim racing broadcasts, saying that he's always been the bridesmaid. He's always been second. He never really had that opportunity. He's always been fighting with someone who always just seemed to get the edge towards the latter end of the seasons. But we saw last year he was able to keep to that level of consistency, was able to pull it out the bag with fantastic result after fantastic result. Something he's going to have to get used to here at E-Series as well. He's got to be consistent. He's just going to keep bringing in the points. If it's not a race win, if it's not a P2, it's not a P3, it's not the end of the world. He can't let it affect his mental. He's just got to keep going and keep getting those points in for the Red Bull team. They've already got a lead thanks to the 1-2 they was able to secure in the first round. It's about minimising the damage for the rest of the teams to do around him. The exact same could be said for Declan Barrett. Yes, you got to win last time out on your debut. Don't overthink it. You've just got to bring points home. That's the job.
Definitely, and 3 drivers there not setting lap times at the start of Q3, being Freddie Rasmussen, Szymon Lekomski, and Nicholas Longe. Of course, Nicholas, I've got to say, has had a bit of a struggle in qualifying so far. Of course, had an invalidated lap in Q1, narrowly avoided an invalidated lap in Q2, and already with an invalidated lap in Q3. So definitely looking strong on pace, but a little bit inconsistent with track limits.
A little bit, but at the same time, his lap would have been able to put in P2. It's 1:29.5 flat. Bang on. Again, if you've just stepped over by a couple millimeters and ended up picking up an invalidation, you're not going to worry about it too much. You're going to think, right, okay, another day, another time, would have got away with it. But he's still got the pace there, which is the concerning part. Both him and Rasmussen, both invalidating their lap times, but one driver being able to pull the advantage out on the lap time delta there. Again, something we're going to have to sit, think, reevaluate, work with our engineers to really try and bounce back, as we are seeing probably the most famous Ferrari driver of all time in the YouTube chat, of course, one and only Dylan Warren, who's too busy to race today, let's say.
Yeah, well, would we expect Q3? Probably not. Sorry, Dylan, I'm joking. No, Dylan. I hope to see Dylan back again. I remember his. When he would have won in Monaco when he started last, and unfortunately the game put him on a set of the hard tyres in the wet.
Yep.
I remember that one.
Oh,
what a sad day for Dylan. What a sad day for the community.
What a terrible,
he was
terrible
last,
day.
and he made 9 positions in 5 laps, didn't he? I think?
It was
something like that.
Really good run until he decided to put hard compound tyres on. It was very silly error from Dylan. Let's honestly. He's saying he literally got Q3 last week. To me, that looks like a bit of yapping in YouTube chat. You have a go. You guys have a go at me for waffling. I think Dylan's waffling too here.
I'm sure if Dylan comes back, I'm sure we'll see him take pole position.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jinx him.
And win the race by 20
I'm not going to say
seconds.
until then.
Okay.
Will be brilliant to see. But we've got the drivers on track at the moment. Philip Presnoda being the first one out for the McLaren team. Then we got Szymon Lekomski in P9 currently, but hasn't got a lap. He is in second on the track. And then we got, I believe, Lenny Papinta. Oh, no, it won't be. It will be his teammate, Lilian Debecourt, who's currently on the front row of the grid with a 1:29.512. I know that Lilian has had a bit of time away from the game. I believe had a knee injury. I think it was from football or some sort of sport recently, so hasn't taken part in the first month and a half of the game. So hopefully he can try and get himself back up onto a strong step for the new game.
Yes, absolutely. Lilian, one of those drivers who's gone through a little bit. I saw the comment there from Dylan. Yes, Dylan, don't worry. We love you, really. It's just character building. Let's put it as that. But no, Lilian's one of those drivers who's gone through their own, let's say, character building session, right? USB sticks being mentioned, blah, blah, blah. You know the drift. Again, proving this game anti-cheat. Still up there, still putting in ridiculous lap times, still being an absolute dominant force in league racing. Clearly, something's in the water wherever Lilian is, because the pace Lilian has is absolutely insane.
Of course, and I saw someone in the chat there say, I believe Lilian and Tristan related. Yes, they're brothers. Tristan is the older brother of Lilian. I think Lilian's 18 and Tristan's 20. So a couple of years between the two, but certainly both very quick drivers on the game. But now we can see Philip Presnoda, Josh, just head down towards turn 11, looking decent so far in the session. P6 at the moment, but definitely would like to find some more time. Of course, his first lap was set on a set of the used tyres. Now we can see what he can do on a set of the brand new soft as he heads his way down towards turn 12. We'll definitely here be looking for a top 5, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, considering he's not had too long to adjust over towards McLaren since leaving Alpine, again, another one of those things where sometimes they need a little bit of coaxing in, similar to what the PlayStation Xbox users need when we go to PC. But Phillips certainly hit the ground running here. He seems to have found his mojo. So hopefully for him, he's going to be able to aim towards that top 5, top 4, maybe even try and sneak into the top 3, because he has had an outrageous middle sector there before chucking in here through the final corners in qualifying, but picks up an invalidation, ran it just a little bit wide, so P6 will be the limit for him. Freddie Rasmussen retiring from the session. P8 is going to be there for Freddie. Lukomsky just needs to put a lap on the board and he'll find himself climbing further up, and he certainly has done, all the way up to P3. Stunning lap there from Lukomsky. Leap Pinto taking a provisional pole at this point, 129.3. Things are heating up. Barry Burman next up towards the line. He's not able to improve. Ike Baina next across the line up into P6. Ricardo Benzoni hot on his heels. Not able to improve his lap time. Declan Barrett, the next car, looking to try and get himself slightly further up the order. Up into P3 there for the young Red Bull driver, with Lilian Derbicourt, the last driver to try and get a lap time on the board. It is invalidated. Mind you, I did just forget about Nicholas Longe. Easy to do when he's sitting down in P10, but he won't be sitting there for too much longer. Where was he able to put that car? Up into P6 there from Longe. Brilliant stuff there from the Ferrari drivers. But again, race clutch, pole position.
Brilliant.
Would
Absolutely
you
brilliant
have
there from
predicted
Lenny.
that earlier?
Certainly not. And along with pole, they got P4. So a P1 and a P4 for the race clutch team. Superb in qualifying. Then we have Barry Burman in second, followed by Declan Barrett in third. Of course, Lillian in P4. Then we have Szymon Lukomsky in the top 5, along with Nicholas Longe, Ike Baina, Ricardo Benzoni, Philip Preschneider, and Freddie Rasmussen. Not sure what happened to him. I'm not sure if he had some sort of issue, because he was along the back straight when he retired, and he didn't DNF on. He didn't crash into a wall or anything. He just clicked retire. So I'm not quite sure what happened there to Freddie.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe he might have just invalidated and called it there, retired from a session, so he just didn't have to complete a lap. But, same point, we should mention, race clutch, I did make a joke earlier, new logo, new them, might very much well be. P1, P4, brilliant stuff.
It certainly could be, and I do believe we have a restart now. I'm not sure whether we're leaving the lobby and joining a new one, or if we're just going back to the
retirement session,
retirement
surely. Surely retirement
So,
session. No one time to invite 20 other drivers back into the lobby. But Ben Marples, our poor lobby host, is going to be absolutely stressed out of his mind in order to do that. It's tough enough trying to get a custom grid right, let alone inviting everyone. But we are here.
It certainly is.
5 red lights. I suppose we'll do this one as a bit of a practice run. We can already see one of the Red Bulls getting a jump start, driving away through the field. Fantastic start for Freddie Rasmussen. And of course, everyone's going to be retiring from the session. Of course, ghosting is on, so you won't see any of the carnage. But somehow, people have ended up losing front wings left, right, and centre. Brilliant stuff. Very entertaining. It's like our own little version of Wreckfest here at PSGL, isn't it, when we've got a lobby restart. I absolutely love it. While Lilian Derbicourt driving off into the sunset, happy as you'd like. Hopefully we've all managed to read the debrief to realise we should retire from a session. Otherwise we might be thinking, well, this is the easiest win of our lives.
Of course. As Josh, I think we have a little bit of time to have a couple of words from our sponsors at GT Omega and Sim Racing Centre. we are back, everyone. Welcome back after our quick ad break, and not long to go now before we head back into the session to begin our race. Of course, we have that mandatory restart because of the ghosting being on, because of the ridiculous slipstream. So, of course, we have to have ghosting on to make it fair.
How many times do I have to go over this with you, Nathan? It's not ridiculous. It's an intended game feature, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which makes the gap, I think you can get slipstream from 2.5 seconds back, which is
just
impressive.
It's very, very gusty out there. I promise that's the reason why. But no, overall, looking after that qualifying session, a lot of promising things to take away for a lot of the drivers. Even those who didn't get through into Q3, still positives to gain. Especially a positive for Declan Barrett, last week's winner, starting P3 on a track he doesn't necessarily feel too strong on. The only concern I would potentially have is having both of race clutches on P1 and P4 opens up a window of opportunity. We saw it last week with Red Bull, slipstream trading, DRS efficiently managing it. Having two cars up there, it's a lot easier to fight off the rest of the field rather than trying to do it by yourself, which could be a little bit difficult, especially for the likes of Riccardo Benzoni up there by himself as well. And I do believe it was also the other Williams driver, Cabana, who qualified P7. Can be a little tricky. They might need to somewhat find their way through it a little bit, maybe a couple teething laps before trying to get back into the swing of things, and at least making some track mates out there, which if you're not familiar with, track mates, they're not your teammates, they're just friends on track. That's the term. It's an official term. I've dubbed it.
But I think definitely a team I'll be keeping my eye on is Aston Martin. P11, P12 with Duncan and Fabrizio. Definitely a big surprise to see both of those out in the second part of qualifying. But then again, they might be a little bit more better when it comes towards race pace, which means we could see them flow up the grid once we get underway in Kota. But another thing to notice, Josh, is, well, strategies could be quite thrown up in the air. We know in this game the strategies aren't as interesting as F123, but we still do see a couple of different strategies being used out on circuit, whether that's going to be mediums or hards, and the odd soft here and there, but the soft tire doesn't tend to be much of a race tire on F124, does it?
No, I'm not sure if you guys got it on the broadcast, but we had the beautiful AWS graphic showing preferred strategies. One of them was to go from a medium tire, run it probably about, 12 laps, pit for a set of soft tires for 3 laps, so they go to a set of hards. Questionable from AWS there, but end of the day, it wouldn't be the first time they've been slightly questionable. Let's be quite honest here. But chat, how do we feel about picking a race winner here? Because I want to be mean to Nathan, but I don't want to be too mean. And I feel like it might be too mean to ask him here, so I'm going to ask you lot instead. Who do you reckon is going to come out on top in this race? Because for me, there's too many different variables to somewhat pick from.
There is too many. There's so many drivers that can win it. You know, it's unbelievable. Of course, you got Declan at the top in P3. You got the two race clutches who've been looking strong. You got Freddie, who's then in P10, who we know is really good in the race. And then, of course, the two Aston Martins, the Ferraris. Anyone really can come out on top here. It's very hard to predict who will come out where. But I definitely think here Barry might be the one who's in the strongest position, I think.
Yeah, I would either say Barry purely down to his experience of, operating at the highest level. He might be a little bit more used to it. But at the same time, I don't feel like we can rule out either of race clip drivers. I think Pipin's having a brilliant result, grabbing himself pole position, silencing a couple of the haters. Let's get the Ron Harshush going. And Lillian Dervacourt as well, P4, another great opportunity for them to not only, potentially score a double podium here, but also just get a handful of points on the grid. For me, that's worth a lot more than just scoring a podium. Even if it was to finish P4, P5, you're looking over the course of a championship, that's going to be a huge result for Race Clutch.
It will. You're looking at nearly 30 points there, which is a lot of points. So certainly Race Clutch will be looking at just getting a consistent, both drivers in the top 5. If they don't win, they don't win. If they do, great. But if they don't, they know there's still positives to take away. But certainly there'll be some big battles on track because many drivers will be looking to work their way back through the grid, won't they, Josh?
Absolutely. Working way back through the grid, whether that's from the very back, whether that's from a P10 like Freddie's finding himself, regardless of whatever, we know Kota is a famous circuit where overtakes are possible. It's going to be exciting to see where they're necessarily going to try and pick one. Of course, you've got going up towards the hill. Inclined braking zone means you can brake a little bit later. You can be a little bit braver. A lot of cars like to lock up there to get themselves rotated across. Of course, that could ruin a potential run slightly further on. As you can see, the race director on your screens just hovering over, seeing which drivers are opting for different tyres. Ben Marples hovering over that soft compound tyre. There's a little bit suspicious there from Ben. I'm assuming he's just applying a setup, not actually starting on a set of those soft tyres, because that could be a little bit dangerous. But while the drivers are all applying their setups, making sure they've calculated the amount of fuel they need to use, get themselves in the right headspace, talking last words of engineers, what strategy they want to go for, making sure that's nailed down before the start of this race, because it could be absolute fireworks here around Kota. Oh, I'm so happy to be back. Round 2, baby. Let's get
Who's winning?
Let's
Josh?
get this
Who's winning?
cracking. Well, there's not long to find out to see who's winning. Let's kick it off with the 5 red lights. Hold up. There we go, and away we go. Lenny Pinter getting a little bit of a box start there, with Barry Burman being able to push a little bit alongside, having to back out though, as Declan Barrett is going to go 3 wide in the background there between, oh my word, Lillian Derbicourt, what have you just done? You managed to get yourself all the way up into P3 there. Brilliant stuff there from Lillian. Simeon Lukomsky falling down a couple of positions. Nicholas Longe into P6. Ricardo Benzoni hopping up into P7. Ike Vena into P8. Moves all over the shop. Freddie Rasmussen as well. Not necessarily getting the start he was hoping for. Falling down back into P12 with Duncan Hoffland jumping up a couple of positions here, there, and everywhere. But to answer your question directly, I was going to say it would be the driver who ends up grabbing P3 out of turn 1, as Nicholas Longe there goes for an absolute dramatic send on the inside of Simeon Lukomsky. Lukomsky not really trying to put up too much of a fight, knowing how powerful the slipstream is, willing just to tuck back inside. But I was going to say the driver in P3, given how strong the slipstream is, for me, P3 is going to be the place you want to be. So I'm hedging my bets for Lillian Derbicourt to win this race here at E-Series.
Was Ikebana there has a bit of an issue in the braking zone and nearly takes out someone ahead of him as they went down in towards turn number 12. As we can see, Philip Preschneider now making a move on Ricardo Benzoni, or Ricardo keeping that position, as now we can see Duncan Hoffland there going up to the inside at turn 14 to try and make a move on Philip Preschneider, getting himself up into the top 10 very nicely here for the Aston Martin team. Is Duncan Hoffland, his teammate for a bit to so losing a place down to P13, and also Freddie Rasmussen on the set, the hards dropping down to P12 as Duncan still goes side by side with Philip in towards the final corner, and it will be Duncan up into P9 as they head up towards turn 1. It will be Lenny Pinter who leads the race ahead of Barry Burman, and Race Clutch in third with Lillian Derbicourt. A very good start for the Race Clutch team. First and third, and then of course Declan Barrett in fourth, followed by Nicholas Longe in the top 5.
Absolutely brilliant stuff there for both the race clutches, as well as them. Both of Ferraris making sure to get in towards this equal footing, trying to neutralise a little bit of a battle. Of course, Nicola Barrett's going to be a little bit of an odd one out here in towards this battle, but all he's got to do is sit within the DRS, manage his battery well enough, and he can find himself having an absolute whale of a time. And then, of course, you've got the drivers with slightly more split strategies, opting for the hard compound tyre. Further down the order you look, the more of them have opted for this hard compound tyre. So, it wouldn't surprise you if you start seeing Ikebana fall off the back of Simeon Lukomsky, and we end up having a top 6 battle on this medium compounded tyre, while the hard tyres very much nursing themselves. As we see Barry Burman pulling over towards the left-hand side of Lenny Pinter and getting that move done sooner rather than later. But of course, that could potentially put him in a little bit of risk. They've got to work together efficiently here, the top 6, to break away from the hard compound runners, to neutralise the effect. The likes of Ikebana, Ricardo Benzoni, Duncan Hoffland, Freddie Rasmussen, Philip Preschneider will have when it comes towards that crossover point from the hard tyres, well, they'll naturally just get a little bit quicker than the mediums, as you would expect as the degradation starts to set in.
Of course, and for now, Ikebana is just on the cusp and now drops below a second, but gets back into the 1 second gap as they head into the final corner. We'll see in a second if Ikebana did get that DRS towards turn 1, and he did. Just for now, keeps that DRS, as we can see Nicholas Longe here looking for a move on Declan Barrett. Declan to the inside, the Ferrari to the outside, and Nicholas can't quite find the move. Went for a switchback heading out of turn 1, but Declan covered it off nicely, and still Declan Barrett keeps that P4 in the Red Bull. Of course, Nicholas behind, and then Shimon Lukomsky in P6 in the McLaren car. And of course, Freddie Rasmussen definitely a bit of an outlier in this race at the moment, down in P12 in the Red Bull, but certainly on that alternate strategy to those on the mediums will be looking to try and work his way up the grid as the race gets on, and more towards the last 10 laps is where we'll see Freddie fighting back. As we can see there, Benzoni looking to close in on Bana as they head in towards turn 11, and certainly Ikebana making a bit of a mistake heading in towards turn 11 gives Ricardo Benzoni a bit of an advantage heading down towards turn 12, where he should make himself up in towards P7, and maybe Duncan will be looking to make a move.
Yeah, as Nicholas makes the move on Declan Barrett, easy as you like. Declan not opting to put up any defence, understands at this point it's not worth fighting. They'll lose too much time battling each other. It's a fundamental thing a lot of these younger drivers will learn in karting. As Icabena getting a little bit of the worse for wear out of that battle, losing a couple extra positions, having to put up a strong battle here with Duncan Hoffland. Duncan gives him a position back, maybe a little bit of a push and shove between them. But for me, biggest surprise so far, Fabrizio Nonoso opting to start the medium compound tyre, not get him a launch he would like, and now it very much seems like he's stuck up behind Fredrik Rasmussen at this moment in time, down in P13. Not the start I would have expected from him, but again, one of those things with the F1 sim racing drivers who have got the experience battling in the likes of PCF1 here. They understand that if stuff isn't going their way, it's a long race. 25 racing laps left to go here. There's a lot which can change in that time.
Of course, as Duncan Hoffland and Icabena still have a battle in towards the S's, and Duncan this time around does get that move complete for P8 on the road, and now we'll be looking to try and get back within a second of Riccardo Benzoni, who's been a bit lucky on this last lap and a half, as hasn't had to worry too much about the cars behind, looking to make a battle with him for position as they head down towards turn number 11, and Duncan there took him back in within 8/10 of the RHG Cup, so still we'll be looking to keep that DRS. Of course, further back, Harvey Cohen down in P18 for RHG. Definitely not where they would like to see their cars, as Lenny Pinto goes up into P1 ahead of Barry Burman and Lillian Dev, of course, still in third place for Race Clutch. So it seems so far here the battle for first, second, third and fourth is between Race Clutch and Ferrari, and that definitely is not what we expect to see, or would have expected to see, as Harvey Cohen gets a 3-second penalty.
No, it very much feels like we've well, okay, never mind. Scratch out reference. It doesn't work anymore. No, we'll leave that one in the past, shall we? But important to see here, Duncan Hoffland having to extort a little bit more of battery just to ensure Riccardo Benzoni doesn't squirm his way out of DRS range, because that could be absolutely catastrophic from P8 downwards if that was to happen. Understanding now they've got to catch back up, all of them very willing to deploy a little bit more battery just to reel Benzoni back in so he can't scamper away. Meanwhile, all of this is happening. Turns very much into a bit of a chess match here between Race Clutch and Ferrari, doesn't it? Do you want to be the driver to be able to make the move to hop up into P2 if you're Lillian? Or if you're Longue, do you want to try and get past Lillian just to give Barry a little bit of breathing space where you can both start to recharge your battery a little bit before trying to get that move on to try and make it a 1-2 for your team? A lot of these fundamental things here drivers are having to think about, communicating with engineers throughout the course of a lap. Of course, we'll quite often hear, oh, okay, Fredrik Rasmussen picking up a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Harvey Cohen picked one up a lap earlier, showing that these drivers, they're more than happy to try and push stuff a little bit. But Lenny Pinto right now seems to be quite comfortable in the lead and very happy to swap positions with Barry Burman each and every lap.
Of course, now as the Ferraris are looking to be on the attack of the Race Clutches here, down towards turn number 12, and the two Race Clutch cars nearly come to contact in towards a braking zone at turn 12, and it will be Lenny in second ahead of Lillian, and then Nicholas Longue here looking to make a possible move ahead of Lillian Debecourt to the outside at turn number 15. Harsh defence from the Race Clutch driver, and Nicholas Longue has the inside line through in towards turn 16. Lillian has to hang it round the outside, but just hasn't quite got the power to keep it there. So Nicholas Longue now inherits third position in the Ferrari car, and Declan Barrett also looking to close in a little bit more now in the Red Bull to try and make a move and disrupt the party of first, second, third and fourth as they all head back down towards turn number 1. Icabena also takes a 3-second penalty, so we're lap 6 in, Josh, and 3 cars have a penalty for track limits.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough, but with this battle heating up towards the front as well, very much exact same as last lap, but the roles are reversed this time. If you're Lillian Debecourt, you've got to think about trying to make a move on Nicholas Longue to try and ease Lenny Pinto's stress. Just somewhat relax him a little bit and make it understand. And if you're Lenny, you're thinking about maybe going on the offensive a little bit more. Use your offense as your best form of defense. There's no way Nicholas is going to be able to overtake you if you're pulling alongside Barry, and Barry's well aware of that, deploying a little bit more battery, trying to get himself a little bit more distance. But at the end of the day, it's F1 24. One thing is inevitable, right? You've got death and taxes, right? That's in life. But on F1 24, overtaking in slipstream with DRS, it's inevitable. It's just going to happen no matter which way you look. Yeah. As Lenny Pinto retakes the lead of this race. At this point, you might as well expect it every lap, but it does give Barry this opportunity where he's not got pressure from behind now. He can save a little bit more battery to burn it for the next lap, and then we could potentially be looking at a double overtake from Nicolas Longuet just to secure Ferrari that 1-2. It all comes down to how much these guys have practiced and choreographed these sort of moves in their practice regimes, in their training to understand, because all it takes is one little mistake and you're looking at the likes of Simeon Lekomsky, Declan Barry getting involved in this, and then you can't really use that leverage you've got of having the two cars there because everyone's a bit dispersed.
Of course, as Will Lewis making a move ahead of Fabrizio Donoso up into P13 is the Williams of Will Lewis, of course, on a set. The hard tyres looking to close down. They on the back of Gregory Prejibble, who's on a set. The mediums definitely now. The mediums look like they're starting to lose a little bit of time. We can see Duncan Hoffman there bringing that gap down from 2 seconds to 1.5, and we can see a move further back there from Angelo D'Ortenzio looking to get ahead of Fabrizio Donoso. So either Fabrizio's got an issue or the medium tyres are definitely losing a lot of pace here.
Surely an issue. You could still see out towards the front. They're still maintaining a well enough gap to Duncan Hoffman. Although it is coming down slowly, it's not at the rate as Donoso's falling back through the field. As we do have Jake Benham in chat saying, "Where's SRT?" I don't have the heart to tell him, Nathan. I really don't. SRT lives on in our hearts no matter what happens. So much so, if you actually like this video, Nathan's going to go and get a tattoo of him on his chest, as we are seeing...
Will I?
Yeah, you will. Of course you will. As we do see the double overtake there, or should I say tandem overtake? Synchronised overtake? I don't know, I've watched way too much of the Olympics, but Barry Burman, Nicolas Longuet holding on to the P1, P2 here, Ferrari, exactly what they need. And Race Clutch, despite having pole position and leading this race, I feel like even if they was to finish P3, P4, they wouldn't be able to walk away disheartened here.
Yeah, they would certainly be quite happy indeed. And Nicolas Longuet yet again showing his expertise of working his way through the field. Started P6 now is P2 as he goes into the pits very early here from Nicolas Longuet and nearly hits the wall on his way in along with Szymon Lekomsky. So it does seem like the medium tyres definitely are now at a drop-off stage and definitely not as strong as they were beforehand, as Barry Burman now, of course, inherits the lead ahead of Nicholas, and then Lenny in second, Lily in third, and Declan Barrett in fourth. So those four staying out on their tyres. Surely, at least one of the race coaches, Barry and Declan, will be heading into the pits next lap.
It's very much going to weigh up the power of having fresh tyres through this first sector and final sector compared to having the slipstream, DRS and battery usage in the middle sector for these front four guys, because we know how powerful the undercut is, as Freddie Rasmussen picks up another 3 seconds worth of time penalties, allocating himself up towards 6 seconds. It's certainly not been an ideal race for Rasmussen, has it? He currently finds himself in P9, but with the penalties applied, he's looking to finish down in P16 at the minute, which is not the way Red Bull would have hoped this one would have gone. As Jake Benham uses hashtag get streamlined. Oh god, I miss SRT, honestly. But Lenny Pipinta pulling out a very brave move down into the braking zone to get back past Barry Burman. But all the while, they're all squabbling. If they're thinking about pitting this lap, Nicolas Longuet is gaining a little bit of an advantage, having a bit of clean air, a little bit of, clean track to run on, will do him an absolute world of good, similar to Simeon Lekomsky, who's able to pick up the DRS and has closed up to Nicolas Longuet, who could very much find himself inside this top 4 battle.
Of course, and we'll see here who goes in towards the pit lane, and Lenny Pipinta will go into the pits, Barry Burman as well, and Declan Barrett making his pit stop. So everyone apart from Lily and Debacore now into the pit lane, and we'll be onto a brand new set of the hard compound tyres, as we can see. And that'll be Fabrizio Donoso and Gregory Prejibble as well, heading into the pits to get onto a set of the hard tyres, which means I think Nicholas should come out ahead, or should come out in the lead ahead of Lenny and Barry as they head up towards turn 1. Let's go on board here with Lenny Pipinta. Will he keep the lead? I think he might. It will be close down towards turn 1. Round the outside goes Nicolas Longuet. Lenny Pipinta tries to fight it, but fresher tyres for Nicolas Longuet. He takes up net P1 position ahead of Lenny Pipinta. Of course, warmer tyres will definitely give him that advantage. And then Lekomsky comes out just behind Barry Burman in third position, with Declan Barrett also in the net P5 in P16 at the moment on circuit.
Again, but we know how long of a race this can be, of course. Only 9 laps in, and how many times have we already seen these top 4, 5 guys swap over positions? Anything is up for gains here. Of course, we've still got Lillian to come out in all of this as well, presumably out the back of this little gaggle of cars, but we'll have the fresher tyres. These guys now potentially going to be thinking about using a little bit more battery to try and break a little bit of DRS towards Lillian, as Lillian's having to extend the lap another, extend the tyres for another lap in order to not double stack in the Haas garage for a race clutch. But with that being said, Lenny Pinto now has a fantastic opportunity in Sector 3 to back up the entire field to try and give Lillian a little bit more breathing room through this final sector, as we see the red light flashing, showing no battery usage, and it's going into a lovely little state of recharge.
Of course, as Lillian Debacker, of course, enters the pit lane now to go into a set of the hards. He might come out at the back of this train because of him obviously staying out a lap extra and having that overcut disadvantage generally. As Lekomsky gets a 3-second penalty. I presume, did he have one before already or not?
No.
So definitely not good at all for Lekomsky, as we can see Debacle come out in P16 just behind the back of Declan Barrett. So we'll see here if that tyre advantage will help him as the race continues on. But of course now that gives Duncan Hoffman the lead of the race ahead of Philip Preschneider and Riccardo Benzoni in third place for the RHG team. Of course, Freddie Rasmussen in fourth with 6 seconds of penalties. Definitely a big surprise for the Red Bull team, who were looking to try and extend that lead. They might do, depending where Declan finishes. And of course, Ferrari in a position there to try and close in the championship as Philip Preschneider takes the lead for McLaren.
Yeah, again, it's very much one of those things, isn't it? Yes, they will have extended the lead away from P2, but they're losing out to the points, to potential championship rivals, the likes of Race Clutch, the likes of Ferrari, the likes of McLaren as well. If they're getting a good handful of points, even if you start to gain an advantage over P2 in the standings, it's going to be one of those, slightly concerning things for them moving forward, thinking, right, okay, didn't have a great race last time out. Everyone's kind of packed up the field together a little bit, and it could very much spark touchwood here, Nathan, because we're going to use a little bit of copium, a potential four-way fight for the title here.
Well, it could certainly happen, but if we say it, it certainly won't.
That's why I said
we'll ignore it for now.
You better have been touching your desk, mate. You better.
I was,
yeah,
but the
okay,
desk,
good.
yeah,
right,
but...
everyone at home in chat, we want a four-way fight, right?
Yep, we certainly do.
Brilliant. Right, everyone's in agreement. Lovely stuff. So, let's see how these hard compound tyres are going to fare and how long these hard compound runners are going to be running their tyres. Of course, for mediums, tend to drop off around lap 7, lap 8. A quick bit of maths will tell you lap 20 is when these hard tyres are going to be called to dive into the pits. But with everything which has been going on so far, if it keeps squabbling like this, it might be a little bit sooner than that.
Of course, and obviously the advantage they will get is being on lighter fuel. As we can see, Harvey Cohen here hold up the field as they head their way through and towards turn 11, and a bit of contact. Harvey gets pushed wide, and Pepinto now gets ahead of the RHG, and along with Barry Burrowman, who will be looking to try and get ahead of the RHG car. Then we have Shimon Lekomsky, who will be looking to get ahead of Harvey Cohen as well as they head down towards turn 12. Harvey has to defend the outside, bit of contact with Barry as it seems into the braking zone. Barry gets that P3 net position as Lekomsky does get ahead of Harvey Cohen now, and we can see Declan Barrett there looking to push Harvey out of the way to gauge Red Bull up into net P5 and does so, but Harvey will still try and fight back as that's Lillian Debacle looking for a bit of a send, making it 3 wide into turn 15.
That was an absolute outrageous dive bomb down the inside of 2 cars where you know it's always going to tighten. Again, maybe a little bit of desperation there from Lillian. Feel like they're already on the back foot after the strategy call, but they've got to remember, fresher tyres will pay dividends in the latter stages of this race against the opposition. You've just got to make sure you keep your front wing clean. That's the key part moving forward, as we do see Gregory pumping in the fastest lap here. Fantastic stuff from the young driver at the Loche Academy on 3-lap-old hard compound tyres with potential here. Only realistically looking 4 seconds off the back of Lillian Debacle. Could potentially see the Loche Academy being able to sneak into this battle as long as they keep rotating the DRS with Fabrizio Donoso. That's going to be the key for their success here in this race.
Of course, they certainly will need to work together here to try and pull forward in the Grand Prix. The gap now 3.4 seconds, so they're closing in quite quickly. But then again, of course, Harvey Cohen has the old tyres, so they will pull up to him quite quickly. As we can see, changes at the front, of course, there. Freddie ahead of Riccardo Benzoni and Philip Preschneider ahead of Duncan Hoffman there. They're still battling for that first position, but of course they will still need to make their pit stops as Lenny Pepinto now takes the net race lead on circuit ahead of Nicholas Longate and Barry Burrowman in third, of course, with that bit of contact with Harvey and Lillian. Lillian's now down to net P6, so still good for Raceclutch to have a car in the podium, but also would have definitely liked Lillian to be a little bit closer to Declan Barrett to try and make a move up for P5.
It'll come in time. Running with number 5 on the car, supporting Sebastian Vettel clearly. Completely just made that up. Lillian might absolutely hate Sebastian Vettel, but understanding fresher tyres will pay dividends at the end of the race. I know I said it last lap. Got to sound like a parrot. Just got to make sure you stay within the DRS. You don't exert too much battery. As you can see, the driver's harvesting. That red light flashing indicates they're harvesting the battery, saving it up. You will see a lot of these drivers toying with the battery a lot more than in previous games in order to try and save a little bit extra here and there because of how powerful it is in combination with slipstream. And to be quite honest with you, it's just very powerful coming out of corners itself. But the key for Lillian now is to not ruin your tyres to ensure you're staying within the DRS. Yep. You're 6 steps back. You've got a little bit of clean air. You can cool the engine down just a little bit. You can get your tyres back into the perfect operating window and then start putting the pressure on the likes of Declan Barrett, Simeon Lekomsky, Barry Burman, Nicholas Longuet, and then your teammate leading the way still. But again, with how powerful the slipstream is, we don't know how long Lenny's going to be leading the way. All it'll take is either Nicholas or Barry to pull the trigger, and we're going to see an overtake down at this DRS straight. They're going down at this very second.
Of course, as Nicholas Longate takes a net lead ahead of Barry Borman, who just gets past Lenny Pepinza, who will drop down to net third as Riccardo Benzoni gets a 3-second penalty. But I've got to say, if you want one driver having to defend against 2 at the front, it would definitely be Lenny Pepinza. He's been here a long time. He's been experienced with such high caliber grids. He knows what he's doing, and luckily for himself, doesn't really get too affected by pressure. You know, he can still perform at a high level, even though he's got pressure on him all the time, especially when you're fighting at the top against the 2 Ferraris of Nicholas Longate and Barry Burman. But he does drop down to P3 for now, but certainly will try and continue and fight on as Valentino Labella goes into the pits off of the set of the hard tyres. So sending it quite early here for the TRT team. Should go into a set of the medium tyres and take those all the way to the end, but that will be a long stint, 14 laps on a set of the medium tyres, even though most people did 8 or 9 before thinking, oh, yeah, that's it, I'm going to go onto a set of the hards.
Nathan, mate, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you hop on board right now with Nicholas Longate, can you see something in front of him?
Yeah, a car.
Yeah, that could potentially work to his benefit here. If he's able to time this overtake perfectly, get the DRS, could potentially see himself sailing off into the distance here, depending on how much of a team player Barry Burman's going to be, how defensive is he going to want to take it, because that would at least secure Ferrari a win. But considering at this moment in time, they're looking in a very strong position. They've just got to ensure they clear the traffic cleanly. That is going to be the key at this moment, because you would expect these hardcore power runners to keep going a little bit. They're currently squabbling for positions. They're going to be focused on their fight, not necessarily thinking too much about these front runners who have already made their stop. And trying to move out the way for him. Of course, they're not obliged to. We've already seen that with Harvey putting up a little bit of a battle with a couple of the front guys. Will Ben Marples be feeling a little bit generous? Will he let him past and try and follow him through? I don't know. I feel like only time's going to be able to tell us on that one.
We'll see what Marcel chooses to do. It all depends on whether he wants to intend on staying out or if he wants to go into the pits and make a pit stop. Soon as Ikebana goes into the pit lane for the Williams team, he will drop down the field, down to probably below Fabrizio Donoso, as they will head back up towards turn 1 once again, as Nicholas got the DRS on Marcel just yet. Nobody should do at the end of this lap here. 1.4 seconds as they enter turn number 1. That gap should easily come down to a second, maybe even before the end of the first set, to where they head down towards turn 12. The gap's 1.2 seconds, but the thing is, even though Barry has got that advantage right now on tyre, Marcel's also got DRS ahead, so straight line speed, they won't really get that much of an advantage.
Yeah, which throws up a couple of awkward questions, right? Where would you want to try and make the overtake if you're not going to get a straight line advantage, if you're not going to be able to dump your battery to make the overtake work? Is it worth trying to risk an overtake in Sector 1? Personally, I don't think so. Maybe looking towards Sector 3 to try and get a move there, but you've got to take into consideration how much damage that could potentially do to your tyres running off the line, picking up the marbles. It's a lot to kind of comprehend, work with the engineering team on, but we can at least see from here on out, as long as there's going to be a car in front, they can use the DRS from a car in front to somewhat stabilise this P1, P2, so both the Ferraris aren't having to rotate position every lap in order to save battery, which is going to be good for them in the long run, as long as they're not held up too much by these from these back markers. I want to say back markers, but it feels wrong, because we've just not pit.
Yeah, they've still got to make their pit stops and still can even fight for a top 10, depending how the race goes. As we can see here now, Barry Burman on the back of Marcel Biega will be looking to try and make a move down towards turn 1, as we can see there. Freddie Rasmussen, Riccardo Benzoni, Angelo D'Ortenzio and Will Lewis make a pit stop now as they all head down towards turn 1. And we'll see here what happens with Marcel Biega and the cars who are fighting for the lead of the race. Nicolas Longuet looking to tuck in behind and make a move, and Lenny Pipinta shooting into turn 1 to make a move ahead of Marcel Biega. He does make the move into third, goes Lenny Pipinta on net P3, I should say, as they head their way through in towards the S's section. And now Lekomsky will have his turn to try and get a move ahead of the TES RB car.
Absolutely, and you saw that Ferrari's doing it very tactically, sending one in a little bit deep to make sure they were too wide. So no matter what sort of game plan Lenny Pipinta might have had there to try and get the up and under on one of them, it was not going to happen. Blocking off the track perfectly there from both Ferrari cars, very well thought out. But as far as things go, Lenny Pipinta here, he's got to be licking his lips. He's got a lot of slipstream to be able to pick up from both of Ferraris in front. Is he going to be able to try and make a double overtake? That's going to be the question.
We'll see what happens.
Will he want to as well, is going to be another question.
Well, Declan Barrett makes the move ahead of Marcel along with Shimon Lekomsky. Oh, a bit of contact, I think, there from Pipinta on Longuet towards turn number 12. I think they came into a little bit of contact there as now Devercourt making a send on Biega to pop himself up another position. Net P6 here for Lilian Devercourt, of course, P8 on circuit at the current moment, as we can see further ahead, of course, Barry Burman in that P3 position. Net race leader, of course, is Duncan Hoffland and Philip Preschneider, leaving it very late before they go into the pits. As I say, that they go into the pits, does two race leaders, which does inherit now Barry Burman to that P1 on circuit. Of course, Marcel Biega making a pit stop as well for TES. So it will be Barry, Nico, Lenny Pipinta in the top three. And I've got to say, Lenny still in a good shape of winning, considering he's been with them so long, as Ronald McKay gets a penalty for track limit warnings.
Yeah, he's very much found himself in an ideal position to potentially go on and make a challenge for this win. But we can't rule out the likes of Declan Barrett, Lilian Devercourt, maybe not Simeon Lekomsky purely because he's got that penalty, but we have seen other penalties being racked up here at maybe a little bit of a surprising rate in these series. Of course, Freddie Rasmussen picking up 2 3-second time penalties, allocating up to 6. Ike Boehner with 3, Riccardo Benzoni with 3, Harvey Cohen with 3, and Ryan McKay now with 3 seconds as well. And Dylan, not Declan. Dylan made a great point in chat saying 8 seconds for Freddie to even catch up to the train. And then he's also got a 6-second time penalty. It's certainly not been the ideal race for Rasmussen here.
It certainly has not, as we can see Nicolas Longuet take the lead of the race ahead of Barry Burman, and then Lenny Pipinta following just behind. But of course there's some gaps there with those on the mediums. Of course, a second and a half separates Ika and Freddie, then another 1.2 back to, well, was Preschneider, and now Benzoni as he takes that P11 on circuit ahead of Philip Preschneider. Of course, a penalty which will definitely harm the R8G team, of course, 5th in the standings at the moment on 29 points, tied with Race Clutch, will certainly lose out, being as Harvey Cohen's down in P18, also with a 3-second time penalty. So definitely a big shame for R8G. As it stands right now, they would finish P14 and P19. Definitely not what they would have been hoping for going through in towards round number 2, as Declan Barrett closes in on the back of Lekomsky, who will also lose out due to a penalty, and Will Lewis gets a 3-second penalty. So lots of penalties here for track limits, and you start to think here, those at the top have got to be a little bit more wary now to not get themselves a penalty also.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where it's going to start coming into that sort of phase of a race, when the tyres start dying, when you realise, okay, there's 10 laps left. How many laps until I make my move? And all it takes is one slight error. You pick up 3 seconds, your race could be looking a lot worse than it was maybe even a corner ago, half a corner ago, to say the very least. But again, a lot of variation all throughout the grid. But one thing I do quickly want to point out here, Williams once again not having the showing they would necessarily like. Currently P15 and P10. Yes, it's still points on the board. Of course, Custom E-Series points, they will still get something here. But again, it's not the ideal sort of standing they would like.
Of course, as Freddie Rasmussen makes 2 moves into one corner, the Red Bull now up into P7 ahead of Fabrizio Donoso and Gregory Prejibel, who will fight through the end of that middle sector in towards the third sector now. And Gregory had a bit of an incident there. He did drop back a little bit and went ghosted for a split second there. So they must have made some contact going through in towards turns 13 and 14. And now we'll see what Rasmussen can do. Free air, no threat from behind 5 seconds to close the train. He's already gained, what, 3 seconds in 2 laps. So will be interesting to see here what Rasmussen can do.
And what he's going to choose to do once he gets up to the back of Lillian. Of course, Declan's up there as well, so there's potential to trade a little bit, work together. But at the same time, how much do you want to rely on your teammate who's on 10-lap old hard tyres to trade with you? Potential to get stuck up behind him in Sector 1, in Sector 3. Again, it's one of those scenarios, isn't it? You kind of toss a coin. No matter which way you go, there's a lot of bad which goes with it. But overall, you compare that to what Ferrari have been able to do at the minute. P1, P2, currently cruising out in front. Lenny Pepinter just keeping them honest. Full stack of battery for Lenny. And again, Nicholas and Barry both trading positions to ensure they can save as much battery between themselves as possible. For me, it's going to be when Lenny decides to pull that trigger to try and make a move to move himself either up into P2 or P1. That's going to be the catalyst for when the rest of the drivers behind are going to start deploying and start really pushing a little bit more than usual.
Of course, we've got 9 laps to go in this race, and Lenny Pepinter still in third for the race coach team, but has to fight 2 Ferraris if he wants to try and win this race. As we can see, Philip Preshner get P8 away from Fabrizio Donoso and Duncan Hoffland on the rear of Gregory Prejibble for P10 in the Aston Martin. And both Aston Martins now up into P9 and P10, looking quite strong for now as Ikebena looks to make a move around the outside of Donoso. And also we've got Riccardo Benzoni looking to make a move ahead of Gregory Prejibble in towards turn 19. They nearly go 3 wide in towards the penultimate corner, and they all come out single file. Fabrizio Donoso ahead of Bena, Benzoni and Prejibble in 13th place. As we can see further ahead now, Declan Barrett looking for a send on Lukomski in towards turn 1. Slight bit of contact and allows Lilian Debecourt to now try and make a position ahead of the McLaren of Lukomski as they go side by side in towards the S's, and now Lilian Debecourt up into P5.
Mate, it is all kicking off all throughout the field. We've got Fabrizio Donoso, doing his best Sergio Perez impression to try and hold up the rest of the field here. Reminds me back of Abu Dhabi 21, doing an absolute fantastic job. Ministry of Defence here from Donoso to back up the rest of the field, to give Hoffland that little bit of breathing space. Riccardo Benzoni, Ikebena and Gregory all stuck behind him, can't find a way through. But this time, Donoso's not going to have a DRS to try and slingshot himself back past. Unlike Lenny Pepinter here, who seems to have a brilliant run on Barry Burman, currently sitting in P2. But again, Ferrari going too wide just to ensure Lenny doesn't have that opportunity to sneak a front nose anywhere alongside into the corner, into the apex. He's having just to sit behind again for another lap. Surely frustration must be kicking in here for Pepinter at this point. He's had such a good qualifying. He's had such a good start to the race. But the numbers game, it will always win.
Of course, as we can see now, Philip Preshner on the rear of Duncan Hoffland. These two trying to close into Rasmussen, who's also trying to close into the top 6 train. Of course, the gap was around 7 to 8 seconds 4 laps ago. It's now 2.3. So Rasmussen has brought that gap down quite quickly. Of course, he is on what, 7 or 8 lap pressure tyres, and he's on a softer compound as well compared to those in the top 6, so should easily be catching up now. But the only issue is he can take the lead of the race, but will still drop down because of his 6 seconds of penalties. Definitely a big surprise for Freddie Rasmussen, who was a driver we'd expect really to be looking to fight for a victory.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? And we do have Try Maker saying, why is Nico so far in front with such little game time? I don't know. I saw Yona Martins in chat here. Maybe he's able to answer that question. Maybe just because he's good. Of course, these drivers paid to play this game. You would expect them to be pretty good. But Nicholas Longe, Barry Burman showing once again the reason why they are Constructors Champions in F1 Sim Racing, putting up a great amount of teamwork here to defend this 1-2 away from Lenny Pepinter. Again, another one of those things, would the dice be a little bit different to roll if Lillian Debecourt was directly behind Lenny and they were able to work together to go on the offensive?
Of course, we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do as they sit P4 and P5 at the moment, and we can see, of course, Lukomski, definitely a big shame for himself, has looked strong all race, but unfortunately has that 3-second penalty for track limit warnings a little bit earlier on. So he will be looking to finish around P9, P10 at the moment. But of course, his teammate Philip Preshner in P8 at the moment, closing in on Frederick Rasmussen. He could also be looking to try and finish around P6, P7 in this race. So McLaren definitely looking to finish in a way better position this week than they did last week in Jeddah. But Ferrari definitely going to be looking in the strongest position here, looking to try and take a 1-2 around Cota, of course. Last week it was Red Bull who took a 1-2, and this week Ferrari are looking to do the same. And if they do that, then they will easily be fighting back up with the top three once again after finishing P9 after round 1 with only 11 points to their name.
Very much feels like we've gone back to F1 22, doesn't it? Red Bulls and Ferraris fighting each other. Maybe not a Haas and P3, but, you know, as far as things go, a cheeky little surprise. But no, looking at this here, it'd be a great turnaround for Ferrari. But again, questions would still be there about race clutch. So currently set P3, P5, another good points haul, showing the consistency that we know they have. All they've got to do is keep working on it. They don't have to get quicker. They've just got to keep bringing in these points hauls. And of course, the prize allocation at the end of the season will reward them generously for these performances, because so far it's been absolutely stellar from both Lenny Pipinta and Lilian Derbicourt.
Of course, as we can see, Duncan Hoffland swapping yet again with Philip Prochnoda for P8 on track as they head their way around in towards the final set to turns 13, 14 and 15. And there the gap between Fredrik Rasmussen and Lukomsky is 1.1 seconds here. So I don't think he's going to get this time around unless he can push the battery a little bit more in towards turn 19. And he's got within a second here. So now Rasmussen will be on a charge through the field, of course, with those better tyres and a softer compound of tyre. Heading down towards turn 1, the gap's 7 tenths. Surely that will come down by the time they end set to 1.
So, squeaky bum time here for Freddie. He's got to push, he's got to get a couple of positions, and he's certainly got to try and pull away from the likes of Duncan and Philip Prochnoda behind him to maximise his points he's able to get. But at the same time, it's a lot easier said than done when you've got the likes of Lilian Derbicourt, of course, your own teammate in there, of Declan Barrett, Lenny Pipinta, Barry Burman, and Nicholas Longue blocking the road for you to continue running off up the field. But at the same time, with all that being said, all it'll take is a slight mistake from one of these drivers in front, and he might be able to reap the rewards of it and build himself up a little bit bigger of a gap, as we do see Lenny Pipinta having a beautiful little bit of a bump draft with Barry Burman through the tight left-hander before hitting back towards the DRS straight. The battery deployment on full whack here for Lenny Pipinta, trying to get back up towards her Barry Burman, and Barry making a move on Nicholas Longue. Nicholas Longue there turning in maybe a little bit earlier than Lenny was anticipating, a little bit earlier than normal, but at the same time, he's done a brilliant job there to defend from Lenny Pipinta, gives him a little bit of a squeeze, but Lenny's taking absolutely, he's just not taking it for an answer, is he? He wants this battle, he wants this P1, but to be forced around the outside here of Barry, and Barry does a brilliant job there to shut the door. Nicholas Longue, unfortunately for him, not being able to sneak his front wing inside of Lenny Pipinta heading in towards the apex there. I was just a little bit cautious there because I did see Declan Barrett have a little bit of a wiggle. I thought he might be going for a send in towards the last corner, but everything somewhat settled down once again here. But Nicholas Longue, knowing he's got to try and make this overtake sooner rather than later on Lenny in order to give himself and his teammate the best chance of scoring this 1-2 here tonight.
Of course, there's Freddie Rasmussen. They're up into P6 for the Red Bull team. And we'll see, even though Freddie's got a penalty, he can still work with Declan to try and help get him back on the podium once again and maybe go for a second victory in a row here in PSGL E-Series, as we've still got Lilian Derbicourt right on the back of Declan Barrett himself, looking to hunt down for that P4. Also, Lenny Pipinta, brilliant battling on the last lap. Even though there was two Ferraris fighting him, that didn't get him phased at all. He still fought for that P1 position and took it for a moment, but unfortunately lost it, heading round that long right-hander in the final sector. But now we could see Lenny look for a move for P1 as they head their way down towards turn number 12 yet again. And Lenny Pipinta pulls to the inside, and after many laps of being in second and third, he takes the lead of the USA Grand Prix ahead of Barry Burman and Nicholas Longue in third, and Declan Barrett in P4. Looking to close in here in the Red Bull, but can't quite find a move just yet. And Declan, I'm sure, will be quite frustrated, sitting in fourth position, would like to be on the podium, but just hasn't quite had the opportunity yet to fight into that top three position. But Freddie Rasmussen looking to close in here now on the back of Lilian Derbicourt.
Exactly, and it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't, double-edged sword moments for Declan Barrett, because if he goes for a move on Nicholas Longue here, potential, he gets P3, he's able to close up to Barry, he's comfortable. He can sit there in P3, think about making a move later on in towards the race. If he tries to move on Nicholas Longue and it doesn't work out, he's lost P4, he's down to P5, his teammates behind him on fresher tyres. Freddie Rasmussen, hello there, sunshine. A little bit cheeky there, tried to get the move sorted on Lilian, but had to bail out of it that time. But again, it's one of these things where Declan's very much damned regardless of what he does. He's just got to keep his head down and hope that something happens in front, which gives him a little bit of a sniff into climbing in towards this podium window.
Of course, he just got to keep calm and collected just for now. Of course, 3 laps to go in this race, and he's currently sitting in P4. But Freddie on the charge now after the rear of Lillian Derricourt in towards turn 11. And yet again, going a little bit deep does Freddie, but has a very good exit on those tyres as we can see Duncan Hoffler now up into P7 ahead of Szymon Lekomski. And then we can see moves being made down towards turn number 12. Will Freddie make a send here for P5? No, he sits back for now, as we can see further ahead there. Declan Barrett actually closing quite quickly to the rear of Nicolas Longuet, as we can see Lekomski now dropping back behind his teammate Philip Fresneda.
And again, the Williams down in... Oh, a little bit of contact there between Freddie and Lillian just towards the rear. That was very, very close. Lillian almost lost it entirely. Freddie there just having to back out of it, not necessarily getting the overtake done as cleanly as he would have liked. So he's just sat back, waiting for another opportunity. But while this is happening, Lillian's falling off the back of his teammate, currently sitting in P4. Ideally, what Freddie would like is to be able to slingshot himself and try and carry a little bit more pace, as Duncan Hoffland is also pushing Freddie through the final corner there. Freddie might be at a bit of risk here of losing P6. He's going over to the left-hand side, going defensive, has a little bit of a squeeze on here, goes for an absolute send. And that's his front end plate off. Freddie Rasmussen into the wall here in E-Series. Not a race for him to remember.
Well, I've got to say, it looks like he accidentally clicked the wrong pedal, because he slowed down but then just sped up fully in towards the wall. So that'll be Rasmussen, probably down and maybe out of this race. He's pulled off and retired from the session. So Red Bull will only have 1 driver scoring point. So I have an idea there. There must have been an issue with Freddie's car, because he slowed down but then the car just sped up and nearly hit the wall, and Rasmussen will be out of the session. So Red Bull, only 1 car will be scoring points here tonight. Definitely a big shame for their championship. Of course, we're only on round 2, but every point certainly matters now, as we can see battles down towards turn 12. Papinta being swamped by the 2 Ferraris. It'll be Barry who takes lead, and Lenny tries to make a send and get himself back into the lead, but has to suffer for second place for now, and they will see what Declan Barrett will do. We'll be looking to get involved with this battle if he can, as they head their way through the end of that second sector, and the Ferraris take a 1-2, but Lenny looking to fight back constantly, isn't he?
Barry is absolutely disgusting coming out of the traction zone. It was like that Ferrari wasn't accelerating. Brilliant stuff from Barry and Nicholas to hold on to that one too. Very clever as well to be able to try and somewhat force the move for Nicholas around the outside by boxing Lenny in. Very technical, very, very good stuff there. Again, showing why they work so well as a team, but you've got to feel the frustration building here. Not just for Lenny, but for Declan, and maybe even Duncan behind as well in P5. Seeing all this happen, wanting to make moves, but with only 2 laps left, it's got to be a now or never situation.
It will. It's Barry, Nicholas, Lenny and Declan, Ferrari, Race Clutch and Red Bull here, fighting for the victory, fighting for the podium around the circuit of the Americas, yet again delivering brilliant action throughout the last 27 laps of this race. And actually, Nicolas Longuet is dropping back slightly here from Barry Burman. The gap's 6-7 tenths, so maybe this is a tactic here to try and just increase that gap to Barry Burman, so Lenny can't fight and get himself back up. He's at the in position, and very early on the brakes there from Nicolas Longuet, and Lenny Papinta absolutely slams into the back of him, heading in towards turn 11, and we'll see. I think they've all... Oh, no, he's got damage, hasn't he, Lenny? He's got damage on his front wing.
That's his left end plate as well. Perhaps the stewards might want to have a little bit of a look at that one as well. I mean, again, it's one of those things where you're never going to get if you don't ask, but Declan Barrett is certainly not going to be asking to be let past here for P3. He's battling this for the hard way around the outside here. Very much Lando Norris-esque back on Sebastian Vettel when he was in a Ferrari, but Declan moved himself up into P3 for the time being. But with all that being said, Lenny Papinta still has the inside line, and of course, he's going to get that little bit of a wash as well, going through the right and left-handers. The unequal balance of a car going to be a little bit more awkward to drive, but Declan surely looking to try and make a move sooner rather than later.
Of course, as a driver to watch here will be Duncan Hoffland here on the rear of Declan Barrett, looking to make a move for P4 to upset the party in the top 4. Duncan Hoffland takes 4th away from the Red Bull of Declan Barrett, and now he could be looking here to take a podium for the Aston Martin team. Was down in P11 at the start, and now looking to hunt down for a podium ahead of Lenny Papinta, who has damage, but surprisingly is keeping quite well to the back of the 2 Ferraris as they head their way down towards turns 6, 7, 8 and 9. We'll see here. Surely, Josh, Duncan's in a perfect position to take a P3.
Yeah, surely you would think so, wouldn't you? What a remarkable turnaround that would have been from the qualifying for Aston Martin. not only for Duncan, but Aston Martin as a whole. This is going to be a great opportunity to see themselves in a potential podium setting, but commiseraries go out to Race Clutch. They've had such a strong race here, and it's all come undone in the last couple of laps, but Duncan sizing up this move here and now.
As they head down towards turn 12, Duncan Hoffman to the outside of Lenny Pepinter will be looking to take third and does take third position away from Lenny Pepinter as Philip Preshner is looking to make a move for P5 and P6 down in towards turn number 12, but we switch back to the front and well. Red Bull did it last week, and they did it by, I think, 11 seconds in the end. Ferrari have tried it this week. It's not been as far of a distance as it was for Red Bull, but they will still take a 1-2 here tonight. They round through and towards the last couple of corners. Then in towards turn 19. They did it multiple times in Season 2, multiple times in Season 3. But they will do it again for the first time in Season 4. Ferrari will take a 1-2 in Coat, and it'll be Nicholas Longer that wins ahead of Barry Burremand and Duncan Hoffland in third. A big surprise for the Aston Martin team ahead of Lenny Pepinter in fourth and Declan Barrett in the top 5 for the Red Bull team. Definitely there. A big surprise at the end with Lenny having that damage and Duncan Hoffland coming out of absolute nowhere, Josh.
Driver of the day there for Duncan Hoffland. Absolutely brilliant result for him, being able to jump up into P3 from starting in P11 on a slightly different strategy. Hard to mediums. Not many drivers were able to make it work, but Duncan certainly did find himself in the final podium position. But huge congratulations for Ferrari picking up the 1-2. They needed a bounce back from last week, and boy, have they done that.
It was an interesting race indeed. We have Freddie, who decided to use the throttle into turn 1 rather than the brake pedal, and he's out. We had Lenny Pepinter getting damage on the final couple of laps, and Duncan Hoffman spring up into the podium. The last 2 laps were very, very entertaining indeed, and it seems like we had a bit of a fastest lap battle there between Riley McKay, Harvey Cohen, and Ben Marples. But the shameful part about that race is TES are back to their old ways.
No. Right, we're just waiting for the next round, right? TES, they're going to reset. That's fine. They've took a week off. They've not practiced. We'll go with that. Next week, they're coming up. They're shoving up. They're grabbing a 1-2. Everyone's grabbing a 1-2 each and every week. It's going to happen. I'm telling you right now.
Well, we'll see what happens, but I've got to say, that race was absolutely entertaining, and at least we had somewhat of a fight for the victory, rather than last week in Saudi Arabia, where Red Bull won by 11 seconds. But we can see driver of the day by the game is Duncan Hoffland. A superb performance indeed from himself. And then we'll see the final classification very, very shortly. So 2 Ferraris take the top of the podium. It will be P1 for Nicholas and P2 for Barry. Then we have Duncan Hoffland in third, followed by Lenny Pepinter in P4, Declan Barrett in P5. We've got Philip Preshner in sixth, ahead of Lilian Debecourt, Shimon Lekomsky, Fabrizio Donoso, and Valentina Labella. Then we have Gregory Prejibal in P11, Will Lewis in P12, Ika Boehner in P13, Riccardo Benzoni in P14, Angelo D'Ortenzio in P15, Marcel Berger P16, Ronald McKay 17th, Harvey Cohen 18th, Ben Marples 19th, and for a very rare appearance in a series, first of all, Freddie Rasmussen being here, second of all, him definitely having a bit of a shocker, and thirdly, a driver having a retirement in E-Series.
Yeah, it's a little different because, of course, points are gained regardless of where you finish. So to retire, it's basically forfeiting yourself a point. But at the same time, Freddie, if he had a technical issue and then he did accelerate in towards a braking zone to make sure he didn't hit a car, not only is it a sensible thing to do to not ruin anyone else's race, again, sometimes it is just better just to call it there. Retire from the session in order to not cause anyone else any more harm. So very much double-edged sword, but we will have to find out what's happened to Freddie there and kind of what went wrong overall from picking up the penalties. But again, it's one of those things. But let's not dwell too much on the negatives, and let's dwell on the positives for some of these drivers. McLaren double points finish as well. What they needed, race clutch double points. Of course, Aston Martin podium, but the big winners here, Ferrari, of course. The 1-2. You can't ask for much more in a race weekend, can you, Nathan?
Certainly not. And when we've had what? Red Bull 1-2, Ferrari 1-2, we'll see who can try and take a 1-2 next week, as I would like to surely keep up the tradition. And, well, I would ask who would like to join for an interview, but I don't have access to the manager's chat, so I can't type in there. But we do have someone in the waiting room, and we'll drag them in shortly, as we'll bring Nicholas Longo in. Nico, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening, guys.
Perfect.
Good evening.
Good job indeed today from the Ferrari team. 1-2 on track, and of course a victory for yourself. But going on to the last lap, what happened there with Lenny? We saw you back off a little bit, then unfortunately you came to a little bit of contact.
I mean, I don't know what happened with Lenny. I wasn't really looking behind me right on the braking zone, to be honest.
I mean, Nicholas, come on, mate. It's rule 101 of racing. Just look behind you for the entire time. Come on.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. I felt that he touched me, but I don't think I braked like early or anything. I just had to take a good line, a good exit, because of course he's going to try and attack us for the position. So I don't think I did anything wrong there.
Yeah, it was a good job indeed from you and Barry. Of course, qualifying didn't quite go to probably how you would have expected, being down in P6 after the final run, but of course Barry being at the top definitely helped you to get back towards that 1-2, and then again pretty much control the race from around lap 6 onwards down towards the final couple of laps. And do you think maybe if Lenny didn't get that damage, you could have possibly had a bit of a battle for the lead there?
Well, of course, it would have been closer. He would have maybe sent one down the inside somewhere. But I'm hopeful. I think me and Barry could have handled it. We handled it the whole race pretty much, so I don't see why we couldn't handle it for one more lap.
Yeah,
of course.
To add on to that as well, some of the driving you and Barry were doing out there was absolutely phenomenal. Being able to somewhat box in and move Lenny around at will. He didn't seem to have much free will to be able to drive or try and race you guys in any sort of way. Whatever he had planned, you guys were always a step ahead with the two cars positioning it. One of you braking early just to box him in to try and help the other one out. It's really remarkable stuff over. It's absolutely fantastic to watch yourself and Barry be able to pull that one off, mate.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, obviously we had a lot of practice during the esports races, so I guess that helped quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, we just know how we race, and it just comes natural. Now we just say, oh yeah, he's about to go for a move, and then we just know what to do, and it's just how it is.
Brilliant. And of course, it's always good, isn't it, when you have two teammates that can work well together and pretty much stop anyone from making any sort of an attack. But anyway, Nico, thank you for joining us in the interview room, and have a good rest
Thank
of
you,
your
guys.
evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, mate.
Thank you.
And next we'll speak to Duncan Beanies, who's in here next. So Duncan, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Nathan.
So welcome in. Brilliant job taking third in the end. I've got to say, I was quite surprised to see you up in third, considering about, I think, 5 laps at the end, you was down in P6, P7. So explain to us on those last couple of laps, what kind of happened for yourself to jump up into third?
Yeah, well, first of all, we had to catch like a big gap to the first group, and once we got there, I knew it was all about just sending it and pray for the best. So I think I was battling with Freddy because he had only 1 lap older tires than me, and I thought I completely outbraked myself, but then I saw him flying past in turn 1 towards the wall. So I'm not sure what happened. Need to look at that back. Then the Haas lost DRS, so that was pretty easy pass. And then after that, I think Lenny broke his front wing. So that gave the opportunity to make another 2 moves. So then it was, I think Declan used a bit too much ERS on the penultimate lap, so I got him in turn 1 last lap. And then Lenny was a bit harder to get past, but we managed to get it and score a podium.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, you and Fab in qualifying P11 and P12, so definitely not the best day in terms of qualifying, but definitely in terms of race pace, you was both able to move a couple of positions. Obviously, I think Fab finished around P8, P9 in the end, so still double top 10 for Aston Martin. Of course, you're still a little bit further down in the standings. I know we've only been here for a couple of rounds, but what do you expect from the team this season, do you reckon?
Well, I mean, there have been some new drivers for Aston Martin, so yeah, I think there's already a big improvement this week compared to last week, and I think we can only build up from here.
Absolutely. And to also add on there as well, we did mention about your Twitter post with your injury going through, having to turn force feedback down. How do you feel like that's affected your race? Because injuries aren't often talked about enough, but they are quite a common thing which can happen with sim racing, or that'll be towards your back, your knee, your elbows. Do you feel like that would have had a little bit of an effect on you? Or do you feel like maybe if you just had a little bit more time to adjust to a lower force feedback, you'll be able to get back up to the pace we know you're capable of and really be able to try and challenge further up, especially in the qualifyings?
Well, I know what's optimal for me, and what I'm using now is not optimal, but I think I'm driving with low force feedback for around a week now. So I'm getting used to it, but you're still missing slight margins. But of course, I wouldn't say it's a tenth or something. That's a bit too much a lap. But it's just a bit of confidence. Just you don't feel the car as good as how you want it. to view. So I think over time I will get used to low force feedback, and once I'm fully recovered, I can get back to what I used before, and then can only go better.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant stuff. Wishing you a very speedy recovery, though, mate, because we know it can be a terrible thing to go through. So, yeah, look after yourself, please.
Yeah, I'll do. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you very much, mate.
Right, thank you, Duncan, and have a good rest of your evening, mate. Thanks for joining us.
You too, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, mate. In a bit.
So, we have one more person in the commentary box having all of our top three in here for a chat. Barry, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Hello everyone. Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Hello. So, perfect race, and you also seem quite happy after that one. Obviously, taking a 1-2 with you and Nicholas. Like I said to Nicholas, it was pretty much a smooth sailing to the end. Of course, qualifying, very good for yourself. But then in the race, you kind of just handled it perfect, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, I mean, GG to Nico as well. I think he deserved that win as well, and we worked pretty well together. I think fair enough. I mean, it was a little bit flashback to F1 Esport, and yeah, it was. I really missed that feeling working with him. And yeah, I mean, it was really good race. The first race, first league race of F1 24, and we are back with the 1-2. So that's a really good thing to, I mean, really good thing to happen. And obviously in quali, you know, I still can feel it. I'm a little bit still rusty in general. I think same as Nico. So yeah, we're just gonna look at it and we're just gonna just analyze it tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, in general, it was a really good race.
Of course, and obviously, you know, we've got E-Series, we've got WOR, PSGL, PCF, all coming up soon. Are you excited for those leagues and getting back into the swing of it again?
Yeah. No, definitely. I miss that feeling. I miss doing racing, and even like I can see in my watch because I had my watch through the whole race, and I just burned around 1,100 calories. You know, so yeah, for those who saying sim racing is not physical or something, I just burned like 1,100 calories in just, I don't know, like 1 hour, like 30 race.
I'll always say those who say sim racing's not any form of exercise clearly just aren't quick enough. But yeah, no. Overall, we've seen this bromance between yourself and Nicholas form, especially over last season, this season as well. It just seems to be getting stronger. Would you say you're probably the strongest pairing of drivers out of any team on the grid here in E-Series?
Well, I don't know, but for what I saw tonight, I think so. I mean, I wanna look like what is it called? Like confident. I think we won F1 Esport last year. Probably, yeah, not probably, but we were the best team in the world, and we're just coming this year to continue that momentum, and hopefully at the end of the year we can be again F1 Esport champions and best team in the world.
Absolutely, but don't forget the eye on the big prize, of course, E-Series Season 4, mate.
Yeah, definitely. No. No, I mean, it was really fun. Like in general, first race, the ERS makes it so exciting. Like you can recharge like so fast that makes it like you can use it and then recharge in like 5 corners. But yeah, in general, it's such a unique game, I would say, compared to other fun games. But nothing we can do. We just need to get used to it, I guess.
Absolutely.
So anyway, Barry, thank you for joining us, mate. It was brilliant to have you in the commentary box, and have a good rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you to you guys as well. Bye-bye.
All good.
Good night.
Pleasure, Barry.
Right, so there we are, Josh. That is it. It's been nice to have all three of our podium sitters in the interview room. It's been a long time since that has happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Of course, end of season 3, the tensions are there. Everyone's racing. Of course, prize money's on the line. Some drivers won't be too happy to finish P2, P3. Start of the season, everyone's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and everyone's more than happy to come and have a chat, tell us how they think the race went, and really try and look to move forward. But again, Barry saying what he saw there feels like we're the strongest pairing on the grids, and from what we've shown here tonight, I'm inclined to agree, and I think you would probably agree as well, because the sort of chemistry they've got together, you know, for many people, it'll take years to form. I look at us, we still stumble over each other, and we've known each other for, you know, longer than Barry and Nico have. But, you know, end of the day, whatever they've got, whatever drinking down there in, where is it, Maranello? It's something. They're just bonded at the brain at this point. It's telepathy, I'm telling you.
I mean, some people say, "Oh, it's only luck if you get a 1-2," but I mean, they did it in F122, they did it in the F123 game, and they've done it in this game, of course, also in PSGL Series Season 2 and Season 3. There we are, got mixed up. So they just show how good they are, and they're already two of the quickest drivers, but to then have that chemistry to be able to work together, it just makes it a whole new level. And I've got to say, big hats off to Lenny Papinto there for trying to fight with it. Had 27 laps of brilliant battling with the two Ferraris, but just couldn't quite get it at the end. So, of course, a big hats off to himself, and also to Duncan Hovland, who fought through it all, just went through all the trains, battled through, and ended up taking a podium in the end. I've got to say, I was still surprised to see him up in third. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but he was dead in P7. Next minute, he's up fighting with Declan Barrett for P4 and P5.
Yeah, it was very much one of those things where if you weren't fully keyed in and looking at the timing tower, because we had all that action on track, he seemingly just appeared out of nowhere. But it wasn't from nowhere. It's through a lot of hard work, determination, using DRS from, the cars in front of him, following Freddie Rasmussen's path through as well. Very, very good, very clean stuff there from Duncan. Well-earned P3 as well.
Yep.
Excited to see what's sort of in the future for the Aston Martin team. Clearly showing they're not here just to fill numbers. They still want a chance. They still want to push further on. And after a result like that, I'm inclined to believe that there's potential. There is a lot of potential there.
There certainly is. And, well, before we head off, we'll have a quick look at where we head off to next time out. So, of course... Monaco.
We're heading over to Monte Carlo. Not the rally course, because that'd be a bit awkward to take F1 cars on, but around the streets. We know Monaco. Some of us love it, some of us hate it, but the one thing you cannot deny is the anticipation it brings. The best qualifying in real life, incredible qualifying in the game, and quite often, very, very good races around here too. Dylan Warren, prime example, a Monaco merchant. He has purchased Monaco left, right, and centre. He knows it like the back of his hand. He could probably do it blindfolded if you asked him to. He's so good around there. But again, it's another one of these tracks where if drivers have put a lot of time and a lot of practice into it, we could definitely see a couple shock results, whether that'll be from the likes of Tatum, raising the bar a little bit, maybe grabbing a cheeky pole position, because we know it's difficult to overtake there. It's not impossible in the game, but it is still difficult. I want to see how teams are going to approach Monaco. I want to see what sort of tactics they use, because we saw tonight how easy it is to try and hold on to a 1-2, as long as you've got a good cohesion within the team. Around Monaco, it can be a little bit more difficult, purely because it is narrow. It can be a little bit more dangerous to go too wide. I want to see how that's going to sort of play out. I'm not sure about you, Nathan, but I'm excited for it.
I mean, to put Monaco into perspective to someone who doesn't realise how interesting of a circuit Monaco is, you could put a picture of all 24 circuits in front of anyone who doesn't watch F1, and you'll say to them, right, pick one which isn't an F1 track. Most of them would probably put at Monaco and say, yeah, they're not going to race around there. It's stupidly thin. There's like a massive dip down towards a hairpin which you wouldn't be able to turn a normal car around. Surely not. And, well, they'd be definitely wrong, because Monaco, it's one of the most iconic tracks on the F1 calendar, but also one of the most difficult, because it's not about that physical skill always, it's about that mentality, knowing that you're going into such a tight circuit, and one small mistake around there will 99% of the time end up with a wheel off, or maybe a piece of your front wing. So it's going to be a very difficult track for the drivers to practice for, but I'm sure some of them will always be, as we know them, as Monaco merchants. There's many of them on the F1 game. I remember one of them being Leonard Goetze back in F1 22 in F4 or F3. He won the race by 22 seconds without a safety car. So there is, it is possible for people to be just stupidly good at Monaco. And I'm sure, Josh, we'll find that out next week. But that is all from us here in the commentary box. Thank you all for joining us for the second round of the E-Series Championship for season number 4. Of course, back next week for Monaco. So obviously make sure to head back next week for next Wednesday for PCF1 making its return. I can't remember where they're at, but they're making their return, of course, along with the F2 to F6, F2 to F5. They're back as well next Thursday, and also PS as well on Monday. So there's lots of action to keep you entertained without the week, as I've just messed that up completely, but we'll ignore it. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back next week for some more action for Monaco. For now, good night.
Good night. Catch you.